Tonight on Countdown to Green, we recap all the action from the Music City. We take a look ahead to tonight's race from the streets of Sweet Home Chicago. And we take a look at how you're racing at home. All that and more tonight on Countdown to Green.
Hello and welcome to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. This is Countdown to Green. I'm your host, Camille Salazar-Hadaway, and joining me as always, we have Blake McCandless. How are you feeling, sir?
I'm feeling great. This has somewhat become a tradition in a way for us to come to the Chicago Street Course. We had an all-star race here. Now this is our second points-paying race here. And again, there's something really special about coming to this track. This is a track and a venue that iRacing built. It's moved its way to the real world, so I'm glad we continue to visit it in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. Should be a really fun night with only a couple races left before the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a very historic track for NASCAR and eNASCAR as well. It's great seeing the two come together like this, and we'll talk more about that later in the show. But I do want to address the elephant in the room, because usually it's three of us, but it's just two of us. I mean, I don't mind Alan not being here.
Hey, whoa.
Alan? Oh.
Do I hear a voice?
Oh, you hear
there
a
he
voice.
is.
There we go. There's
go.
Alan.
Hey, it's great to hear you guys. Oh, well, I am in lovely Chicago, the Navy Pier. Blake, you said it. iRacing helped build this event here where NASCAR is all week. So iRacing is going to help kick off the weekend. The eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series is racing from here tonight at Navy Pier. Four of our drivers, Tucker Minter, Nick Ottinger, Garrett Maines, and Matt Busa, are running the race from the pier tonight. We're going to be with you throughout the night, throughout the race. It's going to be a really fun experience.
Yes, it's going to be fun. I feel like, Alan, there must be added pressure for the drivers that are racing at the pier, because you have all those people watching.
Oh, sure. There's people, 40,000 people all day have been walking by, wanting to jump on the simulator, wanting to get a few laps. We finally had to say, no, look, these guys got to practice, because there's money, points, and prestige on the line tonight.
Yep, there is still so much on the line. So we'll check in with you and all the fun you're having, Alan, in just a bit. But for now, Blake, take us through what happened in Nashville.
Well, first off, I want to say I hope Alan gets a cool shirt on. We don't want him to get too hot out there on the streets of Chicago. But we're going to look back a week from today. It was the Nashville Super Speedway. We saw an incredible race, or a very action-packed race, I guess you could say, on Sunday. We saw the same on Tuesday night, aside from the fact we only had one caution. This is early on in the race, though. Several of those contenders making their presence felt up at the front of the field. In Vicente Salas, Tucker Minter, a couple of others, and now this is after the opening caution of the race. This was not a yellow. This was off the racing surface. You saw a couple of Spire Motorsports cars, as well as Derek Bordeaux, that was wrapped up in that one, but that was not a yellow in this 100-lap affair. But this was a pretty common sight that we saw all throughout the night. 2, 3, sometimes I think we even saw 4 wide a couple of times throughout the course of the night, and it was hot and heavy throughout the entire field. This is Timmy Holmes, Daniel Falkingham battling hard at the end of the race. Now, as we cycled through, some strategy was able to be utilized, and Tucker Minter, Parker White were the best two. This ended up being the pass that Tucker Minter was so desperately hoping for that ended up putting him in a position to go to victory lane. And then coming to the last lap, this is the battle for second. So many of these drivers on the outside, 3 of them on the outside of the postseason right now. They're looking for every single point that they can. Seth the Merchant able to make the move by on fresh tires, but at the end of it all, Tucker Minter finally breaks through to go to victory lane. And although Tucker Minter is going to be able to race a little bit easier tonight, knowing that he's locked into the playoffs, I think we're going to see more of what we saw last week with some of these off-sequence strategies. We saw Colin Bowden, we saw Garrett Maines be a couple of those drivers that with that lap 10 caution in a 100-lap affair, they took the gamble. They came down, they took tires, and it ended up working out for them. Bowden, who was back and started on the last row, ended up as a part of that 4-wide battle for the second position, ended up getting a top 5 finish. Garrett Maines got a spectacular finish as well. And I think with, again, the time winding down that these drivers have to try and make the playoffs, that's what they're going to have to do. We may not see it so much tonight at the Chicago Street Course, but at Indy at Pocono, we're definitely going to see that, Alan.
Yeah, Blake, it was a big race for many reasons, and for me it was what happened to Casey Kerwin. He picked a bad day to have a bad day in terms of there was a new winner. There are many people who are coming up who had wins that got themselves into the top 20 in points. So that puts the former champion, Casey Kerwin, in a very precarious position. This is what happened to him early on in the race. Had a bad day, involved in a wreck with his teammate there, a bad day at Nashville. And the fact that Casey Kerwin, a former champion, is now close and even outside of the playoff bubble right now and has to race his way in, not only race his way in, but really only secure his way in by getting a win. It was a tough weekend in Nashville for Casey Kerwin.
That it was, and as you mentioned, Kerwin will be on the outside looking in. You can take a look exactly where he's situated here in these playoff standings as we go. 7 winners have their win, locked them into the playoffs right now, leaves 3 spots available for Parker White, Nick Ottinger, and Caden Honeycutt. Now, mind you, Malik Ray won at Atlanta earlier this year. He has fallen back outside of the top 20 in points, so his win right now not making him playoff eligible with just 3 races left to go. By the way, he's 21st, so he's just behind that 14 car that you see in Seth the Merchant sitting in the 20th position. But I think a lot of drivers on the right-hand side of that screen starting to look for victories as their only path into the playoffs with 3 races left to go. Also want to update you on the Segment 3 standings. It was Vicente Salas and Casey Kerwin who, well, right now, Kerwin's out of the playoffs. So that segment win not doing him a whole lot of good right now, but Steven Wilson has the opportunity to get what would be another race's worth of playoff points, you could say. He gets an additional 5 as well as some cash on top of that if he's able to get the Segment 3 championship locked up. But also we got the teams that are coming out to play here in their battle for their team championship. It is still a pair of Williams that are at the front of the field, and William Byron Esports and Williams Esports. But the biggest team that was hurt by their performance, and we saw this in the highlights a little bit earlier, Spire Motorsports. With Casey Kerwin and Malik Ray having those problems, they lost a little bit of ground in trying to fight for this team championship.
A lot is on the line, and I feel like these races are just not getting easier as we go through. I feel like a lot of the drivers are definitely feeling the pressure. Now, we talked about how Chicago Street is just so, such a staple now for NASCAR and historic for eNASCAR in the series. Well, it only seems right to check in when it debuted in 2021 on Fox Sports 1.
The year is 2021, and a scheme between NASCAR, iRacing, and the city of Chicago is coming to fruition. Less than a year prior, Senior VP of Strategy and Innovation at NASCAR, Ben Kennedy, came to iRacing with a proposal. Can we race on the streets of the Windy City? After a clandestine scanning trip in the winter of 2020 and months of prototypes and testing, on June 2nd, 2021, fantasy became reality. And during the final running of the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series, we saw the first race on the Chicago Street Course. Australian road racer James Davidson would win that race live on Fox Sports, with a certain eNASCAR commentator on his pit box. A year later, the Chicago Street Race deal was inked, with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series running their all-star race at the venue with a thrilling finish and a victorious Steven Wilson. With some final updates, the track built by iRacing had its maiden event in the real world in 2023. And that race was won by another road course ace from down under, supercar star and Kiwi Shane Van Gisbergen. eNASCAR also adopted the track for points racing, with its debut points race won by Bobby Zelensky. Tonight, it returns on the home stretch to the eNASCAR playoffs as a chance for another road course ace to punch their ticket to Homestead.
Well, I got to say, favorite part of that segment was James Davison being able to take home that win. We were able to do some great work, not only at Chicago, but at Circuit of the Americas a little bit earlier that year. So very cool to see that was kind of the debut of what this would eventually look like in real life, and the fact that we've continued to do it this long, something really special.
Well, I feel like you were popping off off cam when they showed a particular face. So that was pretty cool too. But honestly, shout out to our staff writer, iRacing staff writer, Justin Malillo, for putting together the Vault segment. I always enjoy those. I also enjoy a segment that we like to call Logitech Show Us Your Rigs. But because it is Chicago Street Weekend and we have Alan on site, why not check out some of the rigs that are happening there? Right, Alan?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to show you some 4 really cool rigs because we are live here from Chicago at Navy Pier. If I look to my left, I see the Centennial Ferris wheel. I was up on there and I spent a good hour on the Ferris wheel today. It wasn't bad. If I look to my right, that's Lake Michigan. I may jump in there if my wind pick wins tonight. And of course, the background is the beautiful skyline of Chicago. We are here because iRacing helped build the track, so we're helping kick off this week here in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. We've got Tucker Minter, we've got Nick Ottinger, we've got Garrett Maines, we've got Matt Busa here. They've been here all day, not only being a part of tonight's race, obviously for the season race, but also kind of spreading the word about eNASCAR and iRacing from their rig. So let's talk to a few of them. I'm going to come over here. Nick Ottinger, they're trying to get ready for the race, so I very much appreciate your time, Nick. Nick, let's talk logistics here. First of all, this is not how you are normally setting up for a race going into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. So what's it been like for you today?
It's been an adventure for sure. I think it's a cool avenue to do something that's out of the box, with actually doing on a nice view with a backdrop with the Chicago Navy Pier. It's actually been a pretty beautiful day, honestly. So had a little raindrops, but I think it's something that if you want to get the most out of being a driver, you put yourself out of the comfort zone and everything like that. So it's been pretty cool.
Talk about taking yourself out of the comfort zone. Let's be real. The sun is in your eyes right now. This is not your normal rig. Former champ, winner. You have to do well tonight. Is this a challenge right now?
Absolutely, it's a challenge. I think it's hard. It's hard to see all these 90-degree right-handers that are honestly a little blind even on the racetrack. Then you had elements of the sun right in your eye, and then we do need to have a good run with our Logitech G machine tonight, but, at the end of the day, it's up to our, momentum that we can build from here and at least just propel it to, Pocono and Indy when we need to. So it's going to be a good time. I think if we put our lap together, we'll be a good solid top 15 starting spot, which is pretty respectable for what we're dealing with. So
we rode the Ferris wheel together earlier. Was that fun?
It was. Had some good questions. It was actually a beautiful view, and, a lot of people in there for a little small Ferris wheel.
I'll let you get back because we're going to move over here to our friend Garrett Maines. He was the last one here today. He was being Mr. Hollywood. But, hey, same question to you. The challenge right now, the sun in your eyes. You don't normally race with sunglasses on. What is this like as you're making laps right as we speak?
There's a couple corners that I just cannot see the apex. I didn't realize it was a problem until the sun started getting a little bit lower. But hopefully we'll figure it out here. I mean, it's going to be probably at its worst when we go out to qualify. But hopefully we can put a lap together.
We were talking earlier. You said, look, if I make the top 15 tonight, that's going to be a really good night for me. You being humble or you being realistic?
Honestly, I think that's very realistic, but I thought that would be like a stellar night. As times are going on, if I can just put it all together, I think that's very doable, and I would be very happy to get that done. So we'll see how it pans out here.
What's the best part of the Chicago live event?
Honestly, this has been a lot more fun than I thought it would be, because usually there's a lot of pressure on in these races. What's funny is this feels like it's taking it off. So it's definitely cool to be out here. Honestly, it's like super nice weather too, right on the pier here. So super cool scenery, and hopefully a good result tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to it for Garrett Maines. All right, we're moving over here so I can interrupt yet another driver. Again, racing with the sunglasses on, Matt Busa, home area. Did you ever think you'd be doing your iRacing on the middle of Navy Pier?
I never did. That was something really cool, though, to hear that we were able to do this, and now we're here doing it live, and it's been a really cool event so far.
What's the challenge for you who's used to a normal rig at your house? We're setting up here tonight. This is something different.
Yeah, I think the new equipment, kind of used to it by now. This is like my 10th or so live event I've done over the years. But man, right now the sun, like you said, sunglasses, I can see about half my or 2/3 my monitor here, and I got my neck burning. So I did not think in the beginning of my iRacing career, I would get sunburned and have sun glare to worry about during the race. But here we are, and we're enjoying it.
Yeah, I saw him putting sunblock on before. A big part of today, though, has been in showing people. Other kids have been sitting in this rig. You've been showing them how to get around. What's that like, kind of spreading the word about eNASCAR and sim racing?
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. Because, I mean, like you said, different equipment here. So us 4 drivers here at a little bit of a disadvantage, but we purposely do that to ourselves to just do that, help the public learn about iRacing, help kids enjoy it, help the series grow and gain recognition. So that's what it's all about.
Matt Busa, good luck tonight. And last but certainly not least, the driver who comes in maybe the most comfortable, certainly, of the 4. Last week's winner, you got nothing to worry about tonight except having some fun. You even have a little shade. You have an advantage right now. Do you understand that?
I mean, I've got a little bit of shade from the sunlight, I guess, directly on me, but the glare on the monitor's still a little bit. But I was asked earlier what it was like how much I think about that win last week and how important it was. And I said, yeah, once a day, every day, all day long, because it's definitely going to be a challenge racing here, but I think we're still going to have a pretty solid run in the Logitech G Chevy.
They'll see it on social, but we asked you your biggest fear earlier, and you said heights, and we brought you up on a Ferris wheel. You made it, though.
Yeah, it was really cool to see the skyline like that, but I also said boats, and then you reminded me that I went on a boat trip yesterday, and so it's definitely been an experience in Chicago, but it's been an awesome time. It's a wonderful city, and looking forward to having a good run on the streets of it tonight virtually.
Now, one of the hundreds of people that jumped on these simulators today to try to make a lap was myself, and you had to help me through it. A bunch of crashing. Eventually, I made it. You're a very good teacher. What do you think of my lap?
I think you did a pretty good job. You know, a lot of people, there's 2 types of people. Normally, they either go full bore and spin out just hitting the gas, or the people that kind of drive around like they're cruising down Main Street. And you did a good job of kind of meshing both, keeping it off the walls, but still going fast down the straightaways. So I think if you put a little bit of time into it, you could run some decent laps. I don't know if you'd be in the Coke series, but you could get pretty decent.
I'll see what I can do. Maybe I'll bring a rig to my house. But look, this is a challenge for all of these drivers. They're 4 of the best we know, but being in a different setting, having this rig that you're not used to, it's going to be a challenge. And look, Tucker Minter, he should be a politician because I was not a good driver, but he was a very good teacher. He knows how to lie to everybody.
Well, I was going to ask you, how much were you paying him in order to say those nice things?
No, he was very kind of my assessment of driving.
And we're seeing right here some shots of Navy pair as well. And honestly, I'm seeing as you're there, Alan, like the wind is picking up, but it is looking like some fun in the sun.
It really is. They call it the Windy City for a reason. It's been nice. We had a little rain earlier. That's passed. We had a little wind earlier. That's gone. Even the sun is setting for most of these drivers, but it will be something they have to deal with, especially at the beginning of this race.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, for that. We'll check back on with picks later on with you. But for now, you know how historic that Chicago street course is for eNASCAR and iRacing. So we thought we'd hear from iRacing Executive Vice President Steve Myers on the creation of the street course.
So Ben Kennedy is, part of the France family, and as a younger man, he was an iRacing fan. Like, he used iRacing to help him with his late model career and then into his truck, and for many, many years, and became an advocate of iRacing from the driver's seat. As he got into a position at NASCAR, where he's kind of looking at where the venues are that they're going to have races, immediately he starts thinking about iRacing as to, hey, wait, this is a great platform. It was useful for me as a driver, to learn tracks and to understand tracks, and they were that accurate. Clearly, these guys have the capabilities to go and prototype ideas for where we may want to go in the future. So that's how it started. When they started having discussions about a street circuit in Chicago, and obviously Chicago is a huge market for television. I believe it's LA and Chicago are number 1 and 2 for television market. And if you look at it, I mean, obviously it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why 2 of the first kind of tracks that really made it to the real world of these prototyping projects are LA Coliseum and the Chicago street circuit. Once we went and scanned the track, Greg and I sat down and started to kind of prototype the different ideas of what we thought we could do with the space, and ultimately brought a number of ideas to NASCAR, who, kind of picked what they wanted and helped us tweak what was there. And we even continued to do that up here until, the springtime, and helping them make some final last tweaks to the track. Greg took the data and put it back into our tool set, and we'd never scanned a surface that was bumpier than that. And so I think the first phone call I made back to Ben was, I hope you have a budget to do some paving, because there's some holes in this track that are bigger than anything we've ever scanned before. But I think it's a beautiful location. I think that's going to be really, I think, one of the cool things is to see how television and what's great is we showed them how to use our track tools so that they can kind of look at locations to put cameras so that they have good sight lines and good backdrops. So I think the backdrops and some of the camera shots for this track are just going to be stunning. I always felt like that this was a direction that the software could go in. I think it's so obvious to me that, here we are, have been painstakingly recreating tracks for so many years. It was obvious to me that we could go the other direction and help to prototype these things, and not just on the track side. I think, particularly with some of the tools that we're working on to help kind of engineers and race teams prototype their own cars and kind of use them inside of iRacing. I think we're just really scratching the surface of what we can do as a commercial piece of software to help the industry, really kind of prototype the future of racing.
There you heard it from Mr. Steve Myers himself. And he talked about those the bumpy road ahead. Luckily, they were all filled and it's nice and smooth and beautiful. But I think it's time. We've been talking about this track. Let's take a look at it. Blake, take us through the track analysis.
Yeah, again, it's a totally unique venue as we take a look around here, right in downtown Chicago, right next to the pier. It's a completely unique layout, 12 turns, a lot of which are kind of at 90 degrees. You heard the drivers talking about that a little bit earlier, but you have very long straightaways. You can build up a significant amount of speed with some of the straightaways that they have, especially off of turn 2. You have a bend around turn 4 where you're able to carry a lot of speed as well. So just a very, very challenging track for these drivers. But if anything, Zach Novak probably knows how to get around it better than I do. I'll let him take you around for a lap.
What's up, everybody? Zach Novak here, driver the number 5 Coca-Cola Zero Sugar Chevrolet for Oxygen Esports. We're at the Chicago Street Course this week, so let me show you around. So coming to start your lap here, you want to set up your final corner with a good apex and a straight exit off to get the best run possible down here into turn 1 into a super heavy braking zone where you'll go down to second gear. Try to hit this apex as best as possible. I missed it a little bit. Thing you'll notice a lot about this track is just the character it has. As any street course does, they all have a lot of character, but this one specifically just feels like it kind of has a little bit more. It's a very different and unique racetrack. And on top of all of that, it has a couple elevation changes in there. It has some super tight technical sections. And then on top of all of that, it includes a little bit of high speed as well. So as I said before, all the way up to 4th gear right here, going almost 150 miles an hour down into this corner, all the way down to 1st gear. Make sure that you get the rear end tires to hook up over this bridge into a heavy braking zone once again in a very, very tight right-handed corner. Into this, once again, very tight section, very line sensitive as well. Very important to get all the way as close as you can to that left-hand side wall. Down into this, again, tight section where you're having an elevation change over that bridge where a lot of people are going to struggle for grip and drive off. Coming to finish my lap 2. And those are a couple laps around the Chicago Street Course.
And there we have it. Thank you, Mr. Zach Novak. Blake, this is going to be a tough race, especially for some of the drivers on the pier. But what are some of the trends that drivers should be looking to when, hitting the track?
Well, again, this is only the second time we've come to this race, but we've had plenty of road course races as a part of this series before. So let's take a look at some of the trends that we have approaching our second points race at the Chicago Street Course. And I think you just said it right off the bat. This is the second time that we'll be competing for points here at this race. If you remember this series history, a couple of years ago, we came here for the All-Star race, then we paid points out last year. This is the second time we'll be doing that. It's the 18th time we've raced on a road course here in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. As far as first-time winners are concerned, and again, there are a couple drivers that need that tonight to try and lock into the playoffs with just 3 races left. 2 times that has been done by a driver who has never won in this series. It was Mitchell DeYoung back in 2021 at Circuit of the Americas, and Graham Bolin got the job done at Watkins Glen in 2022. Now, 4 teams have won every road course race. It's hard to believe. You think all the way back to 2019, it has just been BRS, Stewart-Haas Racing, Joe Gibbs Racing, and 2311. That's where every single win in this series dating back the last 4 years have come for, and tonight that trend could certainly continue. Now, in 2 of the last 3 road course races, the winner, surprisingly, didn't lead the most laps. That's something that I think a lot of people would be shocked to hear, that typically here in this series you have some very dominant drivers like a Mitchell DeYoung, a Zach Novak, a Bobby Zielinski, Keegan Leahy that's dominated, but they have not won in recent history on road courses in this series. The 2 most recent road course races, however, did have your pole sitter go to victory lane. It was Steven Wilson that won the pole at Brands Hatch, and Bobby Zielinski who was able to get the job done. Excuse me, Steven Wilson last year at Chicago, and Bobby Zielinski this last time out. So again, very, very important that you start up front, but maybe not that you lead the most laps. That's an interesting trend that I wasn't expecting.
Exactly. And you know what? We take these trends very seriously here on Countdown to Green, because it all feeds into what we are thinking when we are picking our picks for each race. And for our picks, if you're unfamiliar with that, how it works is we pick a driver who we think we're going to win the race, and then we get points based on their placement. And let's check in with the point standings for picks, and look at this. Alan is in the lead. What is happening? What is happening? Why is this happening? So
I don't know why,
but
I think
we know why it's happening. It's happening because I do research, I go deep in, and I try to get as much analysis as I can when making my picks. I went so far as to come all the way to Chicago. I went deep in Chicago. I had the deep dish pizza. I got my Jordans on. I am live from Navy Pier right now just to make a great pick. But I want to show you where I am. We're at an amusement park here on Navy Pier. I didn't do the tower drop. I was scared of that. I did go on the swing, had a lot of fun there. There's a Ferris wheel. I spent about an hour on there with the 4 drivers that we have going. So it was a lot of fun to be here and be doing that all day. But as for who is going to win this race, it's going to be Bobby Z. Bobby Zielinski, the king of road courses here in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. I'm going to continue to grow my points lead, and it's going to be Bobby Z tonight, guys.
I don't think it's going to be Bobby Z, though. I think we talked about first-time winners in this series. It's only been done twice. I say it's done a 3rd time tonight. Parker White going to victory lane tonight at the Chicago Street Race. Nearly won it a year ago. I think he finally cracks the code tonight.
All right, well, I'm going with a pick that I'm pretty used to picking all the time, but I've been giving him a little bit of break with my picks. I'm going for Steven Wilson. I really do feel like he was really consistent last year, so I think he could do it again. Don't you laugh at me, Alan. I see you. But Alan, you know, as you're sitting there at the amusement park, I see a lot of people trying to get in on the broadcast. They're excited for the race ahead. How does it feel to really see the evolution of Chicago Street Weekend?
Oh, it's been awesome. And to see all these people walking by, they're excited for this weekend's race, but learning more about sim racing and the eNASCAR series, even better.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, for flying all the way out there to get in the feels for Chicago and the race tonight. From all of us here at Countdown to Green, thank you so much for watching, but be sure to stay tuned after this break, because that's when the race starts and that's when the fun is going to start. From here at Countdown to Green, we'll see you next time.
This is the make or break moment. Not just for the day, but for the years to come. This is where a race isn't just about the race. It's about the doors it can open.
That kid is amazing.
The number of fans wearing your number. This is the chance to carve your name into the history books. This is the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
Every time you sit behind the wheel, you buckle up for the unexpected. You get ready to take on the competition and brace yourself for the chaos, the speed, the weather, the unknown. But above all, when strapping in, you put trust in yourself, your intuition, making your guide to win, your drive to win.
He's a winner in this.
And nothing is going to stop you from winning.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. For anything on iRacing, there's just one name you need, Makoni.
We now provide the best of the best in setups, paint schemes, coaching, broadcasting, and event organization.
With cars across all 4 license classes, we have what you need to hit the track with confidence. Grab a subscription and save money while going fast at McConeySetupShop.com/subscriptions.
And remember, at McConey Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Who's up for a little bit of chaos?
Hold on. It's Larson.
A dash of drama. A touch of temper. Who's down to take it to the streets? To ring the triangle? To hit the bricks? Who's game for a little fireworks between friends? See, that's a trick question. With the playoffs coming, there are no friends.
I believe in something that I can't explain. The wind is calling out my name. Let it rain on me. You know I put in the hours, and I'm not gonna wait in line. I'm gonna take what's mine for the world to see. You gotta take the lead. You gotta feel the fire. So let's see, and I still believe. You gotta take the lead, take the lead, take the lead, take the lead.
To $500,000 returns to the Windy City for a battle in Grant Park. From iRacing's virtual Chicago Street Course, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to race 12 of the 2024 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Well, we're happy to have you tuned in with us for tonight's Logitech 45, where as always, alongside Blake McCandless, my name is Evan Pasoko. There's a couple of fun format things up for grabs tonight that we'll talk about more in just a moment, but in case you missed it in Countdown to Green, it is not just us two on the broadcast because Alan Cabana is sticking with us. He's not headed back to the Ferris wheel just yet. Alan, you are on site at NASCAR Fan Fest at the Navy Pier with 4 of our drivers.
Here, Lake Michigan's right next to me. The sun is setting behind me. It is a beautiful scene for some eNASCAR iRacing tonight. As 4 of our drivers, normally they're at their homes, they're in the comfort of their own rigs. They've thrown all that out. Tucker Minter, Nick Ottinger, Garrett Maines, Matt Busa. They are willing to be here tonight and race for the checkered flag from Navy Pier. I can see the Chicago Street Course just to the right of me. They're racing here from Navy Pier. We're going to be with it along with them all for the broadcast tonight.
Just the 3rd time in series history we have drivers at a live event for a points race. It's going to be fun to see them navigate those challenges, Alan, and we'll be checking in with you and them over the course of the night. It is not just the facility, Blake, that makes tonight's race unique, though, because once again, not only are fixed setups back, but the sprint race format returns tonight. First time we've seen that since our other road course race this season at Brands Hatch.
Well, and that forces you to really have to execute, because you can go out there, execute this sprint race. That doesn't matter. It's all about the 30-lap main race that'll be happening a little bit later on. So if you make some mistakes in the sprint race, you got a little bit of time to make it up. But if you do well in it, it isn't really going to mean a whole lot aside from a couple of bonus points that'll be handed out. There are a lot of drivers here that they're not really worried about those points. They need a win. And so these 15 laps going to be a great test to see what type of moves they can make, but you want to be able to keep your track position for the 30 laps coming up.
And we will invert, as mentioned, those top 8 drivers. You might wonder, well, if there's going to be an invert that hurts you, why go for it? Well, points on the line for the drivers who get a top 8 spot in qualifying. So even though we are far away from the checkered flag tonight, points have already been paid. Let's go trackside and take a look at your starting grid for the sprint race. And Parker White will start from pole. He was the 8th fastest driver in qualifying. That gets him the invert to the number 1 spot. He'll start on the front row in his Williams Esports 53 alongside the front row Motorsports number 38 of Michael Cozy Jr. Then row number 2, a familiar name here on the streets of Chicago, Joe Gibbs Racing's 18 of Bobby Zelensky. On the inside to the outside, the Nitro Circus Sim Racing Team 41 of Dylan Duvall. And on row number 3, it is the M80 number 10 of Stephen Wilson and the Spire Motorsports 77 of Casey Kerwin.
Back in row 4, it'll be Garrett Lowe for BS Plus Competition, already locked into the playoffs with his win, along with Vicente Salas for Tony Kanaan. That 11 car nearly went to victory lane with Parker White a year ago. You move back to row 5, it's Daniel Falkingham in the 9th position for JGR, with the fellow BS Plus Competition competitor in Jordy Lopez rounding out the top 10. Taylor Hurst and Graham Boland will make up row 6 for Team Dillon and the Kansas City Pioneers.
Continuing through row number 7 is going to see the William Byron Esports number 97 to Tucker Minter alongside the Williams Esports 51 of Donovan Strauss. Minter, one of our 4 drivers on site in Chicago. The E-Racer 42 of Tyler Gary and the Kevin Harvick Inc. 29 of Jimmy Mullis make up row number 8. And back on row 9, it is the Pioneers number 20 of Wyatt Tinsley and the RFK Racing 17 of Brian Mercurio. We'll talk more about that as the night goes on.
Row 10, you'll find Femi Olatunbosun for Oxygen Esports, along with Keegan Leahy, who needs a big points pickup if his win's going to help him qualify for the postseason for 2311. Tony Kanaan's Colin Keister will go from 21st, 22nd. It'll be Matthew Zwack for Nitro Circus, with Timmy Holmes for RFK, and Malik Ray with Spire Motorsports. He needs some points tonight for his Atlanta win to push him into the playoffs.
And looking for some help there. Row number 13 will see the Team Dillon Esports number 3 of Jonathan Delaney. Of course, that team headed up by NASCAR Cup driver Austin Dillon. Next to the E-Racer 69 of Ray Alfala. Row number 14, the FGRXL E-Racing number 12 of Garrett Maines. And the William Byron Esports number 25 of Nick Ottinger, also live from the Navy Pier. Then it's the Oxygen Esports 5 of Zach Novak and the second FGRXL E-Racing car of Seth the Merchant. They make up row 15.
Back in row 16 for the Pittsburgh Knights, it's Cody Bias in the 27, going from 31st. 32nd will be Michael Guest for 2311. Matt Busa also competing in person in his home state of Illinois will go from 33rd for KHI, with Derek Bordeaux in 34th for Front Row Motorsports. Brian LaPrade starts 35th for Junior Motorsports, and Ryan Luza, the former series champion for M80, will go from the 36th spot. Dylan Alt for Letard Esports, 37th. Caden Honeycutt for Junior Motorsports in 38th. Then it'll be Kwame Scott and Ryan Doucette for Letard Esports and the Pittsburgh Knights, respectively, that will make up your 40-car starting grid. Well, he was the fastest car in qualifying. Unfortunately, for this sprint race, he's going to be starting for P8, so you got a little bit of work in front of you, Vicente. How are you going to try to get to the front here in 15 laps?
You know, honestly, there were 2 reasons I went for the pole position. 1 is because it's a free 8 points if you can get it, and 2, there's no real guarantees you're going to finish this race, right? It's going to be chaos. And 3, I wanted to talk to you guys. I wanted to get up here in the booth real quick. So, you know, we're going to see what happens. I'm expecting some chaos, but if I could take this interview real quick to thank all my Kanan Esports guys, Tony Kanan, Simicube, eRacing Association, Miramar Financial, everybody that supports me. Hopefully I can put on a show for them and you guys, but honestly, I have no idea what to expect here, so.
I know Vicente Salas, he was there in Chicago last year in person, so hoping to end up in victory lane tonight. But again, because of the invert, he's going to go from that 8th position, gets a couple of bonus points for his trouble.
Yeah, 8 points paid out to he and the rest of the drivers who get the invert. It's worth noting those points only available for qualifying. There are no points available at the end of this 15-lap sprint race. The sprint race is simply just to kind of re-qualify for the main, and you can see everybody watching on from NASCAR Fan Fest at the Navy Pier. There's been stuff going on all day long, Blake. There were fans in the exact rigs that these pros are in right now. I mean, we've done a couple of live events before, but nothing like this. Outdoors, in the element, the sun causing some issues I heard from the drivers when you guys were chatting with them in Countdown to Green.
Well, again, I appreciate their effort to help promote our esport here, to help promote sim racing, NASCAR, iRacing, all of those things. But it comes at a really precarious time for them. Again, Tucker Minter gets to rest a little easy with his win last week, but Garrett Maines, Nick Ottinger, Matt Busa, you're talking about guys that are starting to get in must-win situations that they're going to qualify for the postseason. So with 3 races left, got to give a tip of the cap to be willing to kind of go through this. And like Nick Ottinger said, get out of my comfort zone with such an important race here taking place tonight.
We've seen Nick Ottinger and Tucker Minter participate in a live event before. That was last year's season finale at the NASCAR Hall. Matt Busa and Garrett Maines have done none the such, but again, it is so different outside in the elements. Not sure if anybody has an upper hand. Well, it is not time to pay points. It is time for the sprint race. 15 laps on deck with Parker White in control. Green flag in the air. 53 gets a good jump down to turn number 1. Tight corner, left hand 90 degrees. No runoffs on a street circuit like this, so chaos in space going to be a challenge, as already a challenge for the lead. Zelensky on the inside of White. They're going to drag race through the right-hand kink in turn number 3 into a tricky 4-5 complex. Trouble in the back of the field. Several cars involved in it. Will continue on going as up front Zelensky clear for P1.
Yeah, those first couple of corners can be so tricky. We saw a huge wreck there in the Pro Invitational Series race when we first came to this race. So a couple of drivers, that's why the sprint race format gives them kind of a mulligan or a second chance. But another huge passing zone here into this end, into turn 6, and Casey Kerwin able to take advantage. Cozy, who started second, has not had a great opening lap. He's fallen back a number of spots, kind of getting used up here, but Kerwin not able to make the move by. You got to go through this kind of sweeping left-hander single file, and Kerwin, I think, wasn't going to be able to make it work. He backs out and will live to fight another lap.
Yeah, this part of the racetrack was Calamity Corner when the Pro Invitational Series was here. Then we go back up over the bridge, right-hand 90-degree turn number 12. You're back onto the front straightaway, and that is a trip around this 2.14-mile street circuit in the middle of Grant Park. Again, Zelensky took the lead early. White not allowing him to get away, though. First and second are pretty close together. No surprise, Bobby Zelensky running well at this point in this race. Won here last year in 2023.
Same track, different year, same story up front. Bobby Zielinski, Parker White, these were the top two that were up front all race long last year when we came to the Chicago Street Course. And even Steven Wilson, he was kind of a mixture in things as well, and he runs in the third position. But a fantastic start by Bobby Zielinski got him the lead as they were heading up to turn 2 and through turn 3. Got an amazing launch and went side by side with Parker White. And again, just that little bit of knowing that you have a little bit more downforce, just a little bit of clean air. You're carrying a lot of speed into these corners. Your sight line is better. All of those things play into factor. So Zielinski being able to get this lead early, going to be a huge advantage for him. Now, talking with a lot of these drivers kind of going into this race, there was something different. Again, iRacing constantly providing updates and evolving as we are even in the midst of the season. And some of the drivers were telling me that there's going to be a little bit more tire fall off than what we've seen in the past in this race. So perhaps that's one of the bullets in the chamber for a couple of these guys. And maybe Parker White, if you can keep pace and save your tires a little bit, there's going to be an opportunity there. But otherwise, that clean air and I think that track position, don't want to call it too early here on lap 3, but going to be a big advantage that Zielinski's going to have over Parker White.
Yeah, just an update on that incident we saw lap number 1. It was mostly cars who had started around 30th. So Zach Novak, Seth DeVergent, they both lost their lead lap status. That's important because they don't get to keep their single car qualifying position for the feature. Where you finish in this sprint is where you will start for the points-paying race. So Novak and DeVergent going to have a lot of work to do from the tail end of the field, but Parker White continuing the pressure. They're both pulling away just a little bit from Steven Wilson, who has a little bit of Chicago street race pedigree of his own. Back when we raced here in 2022 for the eNASCAR All-Star Race, Wilson was the winner in that one, so no surprise that it is a lot of familiar faces up towards the front. Let's take a look back, though, at the start. Again, without full course cautions, Blake, the starts of these races going to be so critical. Look at this 4 wide. I know there's 4 lanes of traffic. If you go on the other side of the double yellow line, that's fine, but when you get into these 90-degree right-hand corners, there's just no room. And watch that 17 right there, first car to get turned around, and then half the cars behind can't go anywhere.
Yeah, then there's another wreck just a little bit up the road that a couple drivers who are avoiding this initial spin with the 17, they have to go and miss. A big traffic jam here in Chicago. I don't think there's any surprise of that, even with all those turning lanes heading here or heading there through turn number 2. But again, this is a circuit that requires a lot of skill and being so precise that you're running right against the wall. Even as you see here, Tucker Minter, you're having to hit these apexes. You're having to turn in so early and run just a couple of inches off the wall to try and nail those corners perfectly. You can see the sun's kind of gone down a little bit. I think that's probably helping Tucker Minter and the rest of these drivers that are competing on the Navy Pier here, and they're actually just passing by, well, where they would be racing from. So that's got to be a pretty cool experience. You know, I wonder if these guys, you know, they're staying at a hotel, they're staying at the Hilton or the Blackstone here tonight. Maybe they mess up a corner or do something like that, and they get to walk by the spot and say, hey, I hit the wall there earlier tonight.
They were going to say they were just going to drive the virtual car to the valet and see.
Yeah.
Because iRacing did a good job of modeling a lot of the surrounding area here around Grant Park. But Minter having a good night so far. Started 13th, runs exactly there. Again, it's a very unique situation. We got to see Blake at the championship last year at the Hall. A lot of the prep that these guys put in to kind of set this rig up to be comfortable for them when they're not at home. But again, this is different. Being on a stage in the sun, wearing sunglasses behind the sim rig. I think it's the first time I've ever seen that one.
Well, and again, a lot of these rigs too, for the championship race, you see a lot of these drivers, they kind of bring their own rig onto the stage for the championship race. So there's a certain degree of comfort there, even if it's a little bit different. This setup, as far as I'm aware, is a little bit different. The Logitech, our great partners there, have been so courteous to bring rigs for these drivers to compete on, but it's not necessarily perhaps the same rig that they would have at home. So a little bit different, and all those little nuances play into it, whether, you know, it's a different monitor setup, different steering wheel, different pedals. All of those things really play into factor as we see this battle that's been going on since the opening lap for the 5th position. And I gotta say, Evan, I did not expect, we see a lot of names up here that we've become accustomed to seeing when it comes to road course racing, names like Bobby Zielinski, Parker White. But I can't say Dylan Duval, Michael Cozy Jr., Daniel Falkingham, not necessarily the names that I would think that when we come to a road course, you'll see at the front of the field, but what a tremendous job they've done at continuing to involve and improve their road racing skills, and it's turned out in a good qualifying effort and giving themselves a chance to get a lot of points tonight.
Cozy ended up P2, courtesy of the top 8 invert. You did mention he got beat up a little bit in the first few laps where he got passed quick by the likes of Wilson, Duval, and Zelensky, but he has settled down quite well. As back here in traffic, there is no settling down. This is all by that big sweeper, turns 8, 9, and 10, middle of the field. They're all chasing down the lead car in this pack. I'd call that Jimmy Mullis and Colin Keister, who smokes the brakes and misses that turn entirely. Keister off in turn 11.
And we were just hearing that he may have had some significant damage, and that may have been something, well, maybe you could turn left, but maybe you can't turn right. And, you know, that's kind of a trouble spot that we saw in the Cup Series race last year. You can think of Alex Bowman, Kevin Harvick that had some issues over there in that corner, and that's why they have a little bit of runoff there. In case you get on the brake, you lock up the tire, there's really not a ton of runoff in any street course race that you go to. You can see these drivers even kind of, I mean, they're using every inch of this racetrack as they go all the way up by the wall. But that's one area they definitely needed some runoff. You can see kind of the end result of that as Matt Busa, again, right along with one of those drivers that's on the Navy Pier. We saw the damage for Garrett Maines as he kind of gets out of the way. He went a lap down and was involved in that incident earlier. So, again, has a long 30 laps ahead of him as Matt Busa going to try to make this move to get by Keegan Leahy, one of the better road course drivers we have in this series.
And he's able to make the pass on Keegan. Keegan's got some front-end damage on his 20th 11 Racing Toyota. You can see it there, very noticeable against that beautiful Logitech blue on the front of the car. Curious if those handling issues are going to continue to cause an issue for him, because if they are, look at him stacked up behind. Leahy going to have his hands full. No change up front. Zelensky still leads White, who leads Wilson. Those top two have pulled away just a little bit as we're almost halfway through the sprint race on the streets of Chicago. Continuing to watch this battle from 22nd on back as they are all lining up to take a crack at Keegan Leahy.
Well, again, a lot of these cars kind of missed that initial incident. No cautions here in this sprint race. So it's one of those things that you see a wreck, if you want to try to gain some spot, you got to kind of take a little bit of that risk. As you can see, Matthew Swack, the 99 car, going to go on by Keegan Leahy. So a lot of these drivers kind of lined up. And again, I know we have some very elite drivers when it comes to road course racing in this series, but as we know, it kind of mirrors what we see in real life NASCAR. Everybody in this series has become accustomed to different disciplines, whether it's, you know, running these road courses or dirt races that we have in the qualifying series coming up to get to this level. Everybody is becoming more diversified in terms of their skill set, even when it comes to iRacing. So the field is really close. I know we have Zelensky, White, and the like that are just a little bit kind of just slightly an edge in terms of pace, but the rest of this field is so tight, and that's why you see all those drivers kind of lined up here, and they'll probably be bottlenecked pretty much for the rest of this 15 laps and the 30 laps we have later on.
Hey, back to Keegan Leahy. Ryan Doucette was able to get around him, and to your point about the field becoming much more well-rounded, you touched on in Countdown the Green the fact that 2 of the last 3 road course winners didn't lead the most laps. Format changes may play a small factor, but that would have never happened 4 years ago when we had kind of the peak of the road course introduction. It was 3 times out of 4 a year the driver who won the race led every single lap and won by 15 seconds. Vicente Salas with a move there on Michael Cozy Jr. That is 2 spots for Cozy, who had been running up in the number 5 spot. He slides down to P7, so he is starting to drip closer and down to what his actual qualifying position was of 7th fastest in single car speed. That's where he sits right now, but Daniel Falkenham, Garrett Lowe lined up on deck in this 5-car battle to continue to keep Cozy on his toes in that 38 car.
Well, again, I think you gotta think realistically here. If you're Vicente Salas, that if you could get back to the 2nd row, maybe that would be a very successful opening 15 laps in this race. Because again, so many of these passes that we're going to see and the track position that you establish, a lot of that's going to happen in turns 1 and 2 of the initial start of the race. So if you can give yourself a chance to maybe get up to around that 2nd row to have your chance to kind of make a move into turn 1 for the race lead, I think is where you want to try to get to. It's going to be hard as you get further up through the field. You're going to have the likes of Casey Kerwin and Dylan Duvall, who's about 2 seconds up the road, so you have to do some pretty good work to try and run down that 41 car. But if you're Salas, very solidly made a couple of moves here, you can get Kerwin or another spot. I think that's about all you can ask for to give yourself a chance going into one when you start the 30 laps to pay out the points.
Back down South Lakeshore into one of the tighter corners on track. That turn number 4 right there after the right-hand kink ahead of it, and then immediately after another right-hander, turn 5 to head back the other way down Columbus Drive. Opposite direction of the way you come when you're coming down the front stretch. They meet right here in the middle of the racetrack. Then they'll take a left. They'll go back up and over the bridge and head over to Michigan Ave, where you'll get that kind of sweeping left-hand part of the racetrack. And then again, it tightens up once more by the time you get down to turns 10 and 11. But not a lot of space between all of these cars. Again, damage, a common theme, a battle of attrition, a common theme we've learned in the short 2 years since this street race has been a part of this eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. Still watching as Daniel Falkenham putting pressure onto Michael Cozy Jr. Let's go down on street level, take this one in with iRacing Full Throttle. The battle's intense trackside, but the views from the iRacing blimp picturesque as we race and twist through Grant Park on the streets of Chicago. That was a good look at the battle for the race lead between Bobby Zelensky and Parker White. We'll continue to keep an eye on that one as we jump back to the 54. Daniel Falkenham still trying to work over Michael Cozy Jr. That one a battle for P7.
And again, just that entire view, you just get a great sense of the artwork. Again, a lot of work goes in to everything here, and you can, if you go in your simulator and you kind of fly around this Chicago area that iRacing has built, I mean, it's quite impressive what they've been able to do, and just how scenic it is even in person. I mean, you can stay in your hotel and look out the window, walk out the door, and there's a racetrack right there. It's just something that is a really, really cool experience. I can't wait to get up there this year as we see Nick Ottinger trying to make a move or make up some spots here. That's Donovan Strauss that's just up the road. And speaking of, that's exactly where I was staying, that hotel right here in this corner. You get a great vantage point of those drivers making their way down East Balboa Drive and kind of the downhill hard braking zone in the turn 7. It's such a unique vantage point to take in a NASCAR race.
It's a good look on the board, too, with Nick. No sunglasses. A big counter steer that time, though, off of turn 11. As he's been trying to get to the 51 of Donovan Strauss. Nick Ottinger did not take a time into qualifying, Blake. I was a little surprised how few drivers took a time into qualifying. It was about just under 2/3 of the field or so. So Nick did not get gridded up based by a qualifying time. I don't know if it was drivers intentionally starting the back. My thought would be probably drivers hitting the wall and getting lap times disallowed just because track position is so important here. But Nick's driven from 28th to 15th, getting his money's worth out of this sprint.
see if they can do that. As man, Parker White, I gotta say, I was thinking that Zielinski, he had a couple of laps where he had clean air and he was going to be able to pull away. He has not done that. If anything, Parker White has continued to make up some of the advantage that Bobby Zielinski once had, and he is holding him at bay right now.
A reminder that while we did pay out points to the top 8 in single car qualified before this, the results of this sprint do set the grid for the feature. There are no other inverts, there are no other bonuses. Your finishing order for this will be the way you line up in just a little bit when we pay full race points, and those are critical race points. Well, after tonight, there's only 2 races left in the regular season. Of course, Bobby Zielinski, a race winner already this year, won at Brands Hatch, the only other road course on the calendar in 2024, but Parker White looking for a big weekend if he could get a win here tonight. We jump back to the battle for P7. It's still ongoing to Blake. Ahead of Cozy, there's a lapped car. It makes it look a little bit strange. That's Garrett Maines, but the next car up in position is Vicente Salas. He is pulled well away. So when the car in front's run away and when the cars behind you start to stack up, it would seem to imply Cozy a touch slower than the cars behind, but he's been so good so far at being defensive.
Yeah, he has. He's been doing a really good job at just kind of running his race. And the one thing that, especially on a street course, I remember talking to James Davison about this, is that it's not necessarily going to be, yes, you need pace to qualify well and to get that track position, but it's going to be by not making mistakes. And this is a track, we saw it on the opening lap, it's so easy to make mistakes. So Cozy, yeah, may not have quite the pace. You see Salas pull away, Kerwin and all of them. And again, I think you mentioned at the top of the show, this is a fixed setup race, so it's not like anybody has an advantage or maybe their car's a little bit better on the short run versus the longer run. Everybody is running the exact same configuration, exact same setup in this race. So Cozy just ran out those tires a little bit right now, but again, just has a couple of laps to try and hang on here to hold on to a top 8 starting spot, but he is using every bit of racetrack to try and do that right now.
Virtual fans there, trackside on their feet as we come to 2 laps to go, and the sprint looking to the inside was low, almost into the left rear quarter panel of Cozy. I don't think they ended up touching in the end, but you can see the patience wearing thin for Garrett Lowe. There's nothing else that Garrett's going to be able to get out of this but this spot. Again, that next car, Salas, up the road is now almost 4 seconds clear of these two with how long this battle has continued on. So for Garrett Lowe, if he finishes 8th where he runs, or if he can pass Cozy and finish 7th, would be the difference between starting on the outside or the inside of row number 4 to the feature race with full points on the line coming up next. That's a look off of the back of Michael Cozy Jr., the driver out of Hagerstown, Maryland. You can see the 54, Falkenham, Bolin, Lopez, and more in this group, but I think if there is a pass to be made, it may come down to just these two.
Oh, it's getting close there up front, though. 2 to go. You just mentioned that, well, maybe we wouldn't see a pass, but here comes Parker White, again, hounding the back bumper of Bobby Zielinski. And again, if you're Parker White, got to be smart here. You definitely want that top spot going into the race as we take the white flag in this sprint race. You don't want to throw it all away here. You still have Steven Wilson right behind you. You want a front row starting spot. So, yes, it would be nice to be the control car in that scenario, but if you're Parker White, don't want to throw it all away here. You want to try to make a move to win this sprint race, but again, you got to think big picture here. Bobby Zielinski, he's in the playoffs, so is Steven Wilson. Parker White needs a win to be in that same position here. So you got to think big picture. He may make a move for the win, but I would wait to get physical when all the points and all the money is being paid out at the end of this thing.
And interesting to see race pace-wise how these drivers stack up compared to where they were on just hot laps, right? Bobby Zielinski leading was 3rd best in practice. He was 6th best in single car qualifying, but has led from the get-go in this race, leading every single lap. Didn't even give Parker White, who got the most benefit of the invert, started from P1 and having an opportunity to lead this race. And now they're into the final couple of corners. Again, this sweeper, the left-hander, turns 8, 9, and 10, and then it's going to get really tight down here for turn 11. They'll go back down what's East Jackson Drive, straight towards the water, and down to the final corner. Looks like Parker White going to be too far back to make any last-ditched effort. And up front, the defending Chicago Street Course winner gonna find victory in the sprint race. It starts with Zelensky. Meanwhile, other battles still throughout the field as well. Nick Ottinger in a three-way battle with Strauss and Honeycutt. Do any of them have an opportunity to make a move into the final corner to turn number 12? No dice, clean in, clean out for those three as well. Some cars missing some fiberglass from the start of the race as well. And now we look back, how about the 55 car? Ryan Doucette, 23rd, four-car battle.
Yeah, Doucette and Brian Mercurio even done a nice job kind of recovering from that initial incident. Zawak going to be on the outside here, the final corner, as he has a little bit of damage, and in fact will lose a pair of spots coming to the start-finish line as they exit out of the final corner.
Group will see the likes of Michael Guest and company come to the start-finish line. Final couple of cars crossing now, and that will do it, and that will set the grid for the feature race that's going to be coming up next. Let's take a look at your race results. It's defending race winner Bobby Zelensky, who got the jump from third on the green, leads every lap and wins the sprint. Parker White, he will do good. The invert helps him. He was 8th best in speed, but he'll start second for the feature. All-Star race winner here from 2 weeks ago, Steven Wilson, going to line up in third. Dylan Duval in fourth. The big takeaway I had, Blake, Vicente Salas only 8th to 6th. Garrett Lowe 7th to 8th. The top two cars on speed do not gain a lot in that sprint race.
Yeah, I remember talking to a lot of these drivers kind of going into this race. That was kind of their concern in some ways, that being able to kind of hit the invert just right was going to be very beneficial with how close the speeds are at the front of the field. You see a couple of drivers that made up those spots. Doucette drove up to a 22nd spot. Malik Ray needs some points tonight. He's in 21st. And you see a number of drivers that were involved in some of the early incidents there. Zach Novak, we saw Colin Keister miss a turn and kind of go into the runoff before pulling off. Garrett Maines as well struggled a little bit getting in that initial wreck.
Look at our results. Blake, let's dial up our race winner from the sprint.
All right, Bobby, so you have a little bit of downtime here through 15 laps, but it ends up with the same result that you had here a year ago. How are you going to be able to get the job done here for all the points that are paying out after 30 here?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah, I mean, Parker was maybe a little bit faster than me in that race. I was luckily able to get by him at turn 2, and like he was really fast, and I got Steven right behind me too, and I know he's looking to try to get the lead as well. So like I'm not in a great position even though I'm first, but yeah, hopefully it's exciting.
How important is this restart with how close you guys are in speed? How much are you thinking about how to execute these opening couple of corners?
Yeah, just try to be right on the limit. Like, don't miss your mark. Just get on it perfect. Yeah, I mean, we have to go on the green flag, so we're all tight together. Might be 3 wide. We'll see. See how that goes. But yeah, it's really like, you know, it might look out there like we're just all in a single file line, but that was really intense. I'm sweating.
All right, well, it's going to be a little more intense here, twice as long as that one is up next, Bobby. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And, you know, I got to say, wishing him some more luck. He's my pick to win the William Byron G-Sports Bracket Challenge.
So I was going to say, we'll talk picks, too, because I was doing my bracket while you guys were on Countdown to Green. But the sprint is coming and gone. The feature race is next. You're watching Race 12 of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series.
This is the make or break moment.
Oh my goodness!
Not just for the day, but for the years to come. This is where a race isn't just about the race. It's about the doors it can open.
That kid is amazing.
The number of fans wearing your number. This is the chance to carve your name into the history books. This is the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
Every time you sit behind the wheel, you buckle up for the unexpected. You get ready to take on the competition and brace yourself for the chaos, the speed, the weather, the unknown. But above all, when strapping in, you put trust in yourself, your intuition, making your guide to win, your drive to win.
He's a winner in this.
And nothing is going to stop you from winning.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. For anything on iRacing, there's just one name you need, Makoni.
We now provide the best of the best in setups, paint schemes, coaching, broadcasting, and event organization.
With cars across all 4 license classes, we have what you need to hit the track with confidence. Grab a subscription and save money while going fast at MaconiSetupShop.com/subscriptions.
And remember, at Makoni Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Who's up for a little bit of chaos?
Hold on. It's Larson.
A dash of drama. A touch of temper. Who's down to take it to the streets? To ring the triangle? To hit the bricks? Who's game for a little fireworks between friends? See, that's a trick question. With the playoffs coming, there are no friends.
And back live at iRacing's virtual Chicago Street Course, where coverage of tonight's race is brought to you by Coca-Cola and Wendy's. Order your favorite driver's favorite freestyle drink tonight with the Wendy's app and get $0 delivery fee with a $15 minimum order with the in-app offer. By Logitech G. Through design, engineering, and a love of driving games, Logitech G takes racing simulation to another level. Logitech G, the official wheel and pedals of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. By Makoni Setup Shop. Our setups, your victories. And by Sunoco. From fueling your favorite NASCAR teams to filling up at the pump, Sunoco is trusted to help vehicles perform at their peak. Sunoco, performance is what we do. We are through the sprint race and the feature is on deck. Blake, final time this year we get a look at this sprint race format, a couple of bonus points paid out, and then we kind of reset the grid through that sprint race and gave us a pretty good indication of 3 drivers that I know have a good chance of getting this win. That was a lot of Zelensky, White, and Wilson up front.
Well, and again, I don't think it's over between these 3. Again, they're so close that it may come down to who can get the lead on a restart between Zelensky, White, and Wilson. Remember, last year it was a little bit of pit strategy that came into play as well, as far as who can make it where and how long these drivers could go. So, again, so many factors come into play. But with Zelensky and Wilson, not much of a worry. But, again, with Parker White, you got to get this win if you're going to make the postseason.
Yeah, he's in right now on points, but those openings becoming ever such slimmer. And throughout that sprint race are Alan Cavanas, but at the Navy Pier, making a lot of friends. Alan, how are things over there at the main stage?
Things are awesome. I mean, you can see there's a crowd here. Some are fans, some are curious, but it's even better than we thought it was going to be in terms of the atmosphere. The camera's not really doing it justice. The sun has set. It's not in these drivers' eyes anymore. From the man Garrett Maines, we were talking all day. You're hoping for a top 15. Things did not go as well as you wanted them to in that sprint race. What happened?
Well, it starts with qualifying, and at the end of the day, you create your own luck. As I was talking about, I figured it might be a little bit difficult to see. That's on me. At the end of the day, I clipped the wall just enough for it to count as a invalid lap. So had to start at the back. They all wreck in front of me. I get piled into, and then literally as I'm coming by, the guy hit into my path, and we're dead right off the get-go. So I felt like we were going to be able to come back, start maybe top 20, maybe top 15 for the feature. It looks like we're going to be clawing our way up there in the feature, but we'll see if we get there.
You've got a great attitude going, so I have to ask about this atmosphere. Now that the sun goes down, you can take your sunglasses off. Look, we have seagulls flying over. I just heard a massive boat horn. I mean, this is not the setting we normally race in. What has this been like for you?
Honestly, I think once the race starts, I'm pretty locked in. It's actually really like cool out here at the moment. We got a nice breeze, so this is pretty much like sitting in your room right now. But yeah, I mean, it's been a ton of fun, and hopefully we'll put on a show in the future here.
Again, Garrett Maines, good luck to him, is one of 4 racers we have here tonight, along with Nick Ottinger, Tucker Minter, and Matt Busa. This has just been such a fun atmosphere to be in. Again, there are people stopping to watch. Maybe they've never seen a sim race before. They're getting a full education, a lot of fun action tonight, and we're making some new fans here. We'll see what these 4 can do. They'll struggle in that sprint race.
It is time to pay full points, Alan. Thanks, and we'll chat again with you before we're done at the end of the night. But we've gotten through the sprint race, and now full points are on the line for this feature. Let's head down trackside and take a look at your Coca-Cola starting grid. Courtesy of the sprint race win, the defending Chicago race winner is on pole. It is the Joe Gibbs Racing number 18 of Bobby Zelensky. He'll be joined by the Williams Esports 53 of Parker White, who was almost step for step with him in speed earlier tonight. Stephen Wilson won here in 2022. His M80 number 10 starts to the inside of row 2. He's next to Travis Pastrana's Nitro Circus Sim Racing Team 41 of Dylan Duval. And back on row 3, the Spire Motorsports 77 of Casey Kerwin starts alongside the fastest driver in single car qualifying earlier tonight, Vicente Salas in the Tony Kanani Sports number 11.
Michael Cozy Jr. lost a couple of rows for Front Row Motorsports, but he'll still roll off for 7th for this 30-lap main feature event. Garrett Lowe for BS Plus Competition was able to get up into the 8th position. Graham Bolin for the Kansas City Pioneers is 9th with Jordy Lopez just behind his teammate in the 10th position. It'll be Daniel Falkingham and Tyler Gary for JGR and eRacer to make up row 6.
Back on row 7, the William Byron Esports 97 and Tucker Minter just ahead of his teammate. He's going to be next to the Williams Esports 51 of Donovan Strauss. Nick Ottinger, the highest finisher in the sprint for those who did not get a valid lap time in qualifying, went 28th to 15th. That's where he starts. And the Junior Motorsports number 8 of Caden Honeycutt went 38th to 16th. Look for big things from those two in the midfield. And on row 9, it is the Pioneers number 20 of Wyatt Tinsley and the Kevin Harvick Incorporated 29 of Jimmy Mullis.
In row 10, a couple of drivers have made up a lot of ground. Briar LaPrade for Junior Motorsports and Matt Busa will go from 19th and 20th, respectively. Malik Ray for Spire Motorsports finished right where he started in 21st. Ryan Doucette, big mover there for the Pittsburgh Knights. He goes from 22nd. Brian Mercurio, a substitute driver, returning to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for RFK, goes 23rd. And Matthew Zwack for Nitro Circus will roll off from the 24th spot.
Back on lucky row 13, it is the Pittsburgh Knights 27 of Cody Bias and the Front Row Motorsports 34 of Derek Bordeaux. Row 14 sees the rookie for Letard Esports, the 36 of Kwame Scott, ready for his first Chicago point start next to the M80, number 80 of Ryan Luza. And on row 15, it is the 2311 Racing 45 of Michael Guest. Of course, that's the team co-owned by Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. He's next to the RFK Racing number 6 of Timmy Holmes. That team headed up by NASCAR Cup driver Brad Keselowski.
It'll be Femio Lawton-Boson who goes from 31st for Oxygen Esports, with Austin Dillon's Team Dillon entry for Jonathan Dulaney in the 3 going from 32nd. 33rd will be Keegan Leahy for 2311 with Ray Alfala starting in the 34th spot for eRacer. Steve Letard's Letard Esports will be represented by Dylan Alton, 35th. Garrett Maines will look to do a little bit better here if he could get through the first couple of turns cleanly from 36th. Taylor Hurst, the other Austin Dillon entry, will go from the 37th. Seth the Merchant fell back to 38th, wrapped up in those early shenanigans. 39th, Colin Keister and Zach Novak for Oxygen Esports did not see the checkered flag in the 15-lap sprint race.
Yeah, Hurst was 11th in qualifying, so he's got some work to do after not getting the result he wanted in that sprint. Now let's take a look, Blake, at the Logitech G race format.
Again, 30 laps for these drivers to get after it. Those bonus points were awarded in qualifying rather than in the sprint race. But as far as the main race goes, this is where all the money's paid out, the pay window's open, all those points are going to be rewarded. So Bobby Zalenski not going to get helped out at all by the fact that he won that sprint race. It is all about setting up for this 30-lap main and get another chance to go after it.
And of course, with this race analysis, we did 15 laps in the sprint. We're going to double the race length in the feature. Blake, you talked about the pit strategy we saw last year. We heard from Bobby Zalenski. He was getting pretty tired from the 15 laps. It's a very aggressive racetrack that's going to be a bit demanding on these drivers as well.
Again, wouldn't be shocked if these drivers don't pit with the fact that we've kind of shrunk this to a 30-lap feature, but I think, as you mentioned, that is going to cause these drivers to really have to be patient. As much as they want to be aggressive, 30 laps is a long time without a little bit of a break to not make a mistake. And again, a lot of these drivers were talking to me before this race about how much more tire fall-off was going to come in. We saw it a little bit there in the 15-lap feature. I think in this 30 laps, it'll really come into play when we get to the second half of this race.
Yeah, down 40 laps from last year's race 30 in this feature. Of course, for more information on how to start your iRacing career today, you can log on to iRacing.com for more information. And if you want to learn more about the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, keep up to date with everything. That is at iRacing.com/eNASCAR. So Bobby Zalenski was third best in single car qualifying, but it was a third to first move in the opening 2 laps of the sprint race that has his number 18 VRS machine on the front. Parker White right there in second. Blake, I'm anticipating a great battle between those two.
It's going to be fun to watch. And again, how these drivers size each other up into going into turn 1. How aggressive do you get when just getting that track position is going to make such a significant difference? Parker White, he needs this win to make the postseason. There are a couple more behind him that are in the same boat. What do they do here in turns 1 and 2?
Happy to have you with us. Tune it in from home and also tune it in live from the Navy Pier for NASCAR Fan Fest. Pace car down and in. Bobby Zalenski in control. Let's go racing at Chicago. 3 wide already, an advantage to White on the outside. How do they fit into turn 1? 3 wide for 5th place on back. Small advantage for Zalenski as he tries to clear Parker White in turn 2. He can't shake him.
More battling further back in the pack. You can see 3 wide as Malik Ray tries to make some spots up, but Parker White has the advantage here heading into turn 4. A long sweeping right-hander with a lot of speed. This is a really tough part of the track to go side by side in. They somehow make it work. Zalenski, if he can hang on the quarter panel, can try to make this move, but Steven Wilson's going to have a run if they go into this corner side by side heading into turn 6. 90-degree left-hander. Now Zalenski, the preferred line. He gets the launch, and he'll have the race lead for now.
Zalenski had to survive being on the outside for turns 2, 3, and 4, and it finally paid off as they came down to turn number 6 as he was able to shake off a valiant effort from the challenger Parker White. So Zalenski clear for the race lead. White close behind him in second. Then it is Steven Wilson third. No change there. Dylan Duvall in fourth. Michael Cozy Jr. up to the number 5 spot after he was able to get around Kerwin and Salas.
White is still hanging tough with him, though, and what a great job by Zalenski, who, again, did not have the preferred lines as he was heading into a couple of those corners, kind of going through that bend in turn 4 and turn 5. Would have been really easy to not make that work, but he sticks it on the outside, gets the preferred line heading into turn 6, and keeps his car up front, and then the clean air that he enjoyed in the first 15 laps. That was a great effort by both he and Parker White. He did a great job, got a great start, and didn't make it easy for that number 18 car.
There's about a car length and a half between those two. Something tells me it may not grow much beyond that over the course of the night. And again, now you see the scoring pylon drop in left-hand side of your screen. You can watch those intervals with White and Wilson and others as they continue to race up for the race lead while we take a look throughout the field. Dylan Duvall clear the Michael Cozy Jr. and company battle, and Cozy past Salas and Kerwin. Those are the 2 cars behind him. This battle is for 5th place on back as we go on board with the 38.
And a couple of drivers did have some issues on that opening lap. Derek Bordeaux, Timothy Holmes, and Jonathan Delaney that are all currently getting their cars serviced or needed a tow to get back into the pit lane. But Cozy, kind of a reverse of what we saw in that opening 15 laps. He started on the front row and kind of quickly fell back to 5th. He's been able to kind of correct that here in this opening 30-lap stint. He's now back up into the 5th position and within reach of trying to keep up with Dylan Duval. And again, I think he's a driver that is going to be so insanely focused. Again, it'd be a big leap to go up and try to challenge for this win. We definitely have to find some pace to do that, but this is going to put him in position. He's sitting 18th in the standings right now. This gives him a fighting shot to stay playoff eligible, approaching Pocono and Indianapolis. If he were to get a win there, this race, if he keeps this position, would probably put him in the postseason.
Let's take a look at Dylan Alt, the driver out of Sacramento, California. Special colors on his Sudoku machine this week. He's got the colors of the city of Chicago on board his Chevrolet, a special paint scheme honoring this upcoming race week here on the streets of Chicago. It all starts tonight with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. It, of course, continues through the rest of the week and into the weekend. It'll all cap off with the NASCAR Cup Stars over the weekend. Nice, beautiful paint scheme. Glad that our partners at Sudoku are part of this series and one of the many sponsors, Blake, that have a lot of fun with having some special paint schemes we've seen throughout the year.
See Dylan Alt, how much wheel he's having to put into it to make sure you hit these corners perfectly. You know, we see Dylan Alt here running back in the 25th position right here. Again, was able to make up a couple of spots in both the 15-lap feature and the first couple of laps of this race. But as far as lap time is concerned, he's still not very far off of a majority of the field. It's just once you get back outside of the top 10, so close in terms of how these drivers are able to run. But further back up front, we mentioned Cozy being in the top 5. Well, he has already fallen back into that 7th spot that he started this race in, as Salas and Casey Kerwin have found a way by that 38.
Yeah, that inside row had the advantage in the first turn, so Cozy took advantage of that early, but if you didn't make the pass, like Zelensky, it was a very quick disadvantage because the inside, Blake, became the outside for 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's why Zelensky being able to not let White clear him was that much more impressive. And then Zelensky, of course, finally, when he got back on the inside, was able to make the pass for P6, but that's some of the dynamics with lining up positions inside or the outside of the rows with how the first couple of corners on the streets here line up with each other. You're watching that 77 of Kerwin. He sits in P6 at the moment. Cozy's behind him. Bolin, Falkenham, and some others as they come through the sweeping left-hander that jets off of and now back on to Michigan Ave as they head to the turn right number 11. They're going to go back up over the bridge on East Jackson Drive, and then they'll come back down at a turn number 12 onto the main front straightaway on Columbus.
And Graham Bolin, somebody else that is running behind Cozy right now. You can see him in the 8th position, kind of coming into your frame, and done a great job making up a couple of spots. So we talked about drivers that it's not always easy to make up positions here, but Graham Bolin certainly better than the qualifying pace that he put on earlier. He's been somebody that in both of these races has continued to kind of trend in the right direction. Garrett Lowe, you could say the same thing about as well. And how about Tucker Minter even? You know, doesn't have a whole lot of pressure on him right now, but you can see him kind of running behind a couple of these drivers in the 12th position. You mentioned the different circumstances and everything. All of that plays into a factor, and yet here he is out of all those drivers that are competing live, running great in the 12th position. And even Nick Ottinger, a lot more on the line for that number 25 car in terms of trying to capture a playoff spot at this point in the season. And yet he's doing a very solid job in 13th as well. So I think William Byron got to be pretty proud of how his drivers have gone out, represented him, represented the series, and or even bringing a decent amount of pace to the streets that they're set up right next to right now.
Yeah, Ottinger doing a good job there. He's trailing just behind the likes of Falkenham, Lowe, Lopez, Minter as well. That kind of lines him up from 9th on back to where Nick Ottinger rides. You know, with Ottinger and Minter running side by side, kind of a fun dynamic between those two because they're probably sitting no more than 5 feet apart. That's the closest they'll be next to each other all season long, unless they both could make it back to the Championship 4 stage at the NASCAR Hall later this year. So an interesting dynamic being so close as well to one of your competitors as they are squarely in this midfield battle. Of course, Minter already a race winner this season. He got that out of the way just a week ago at Nashville, which he's alluded to a couple of times. Makes tonight's race feel a lot better because he is racing for points to make sure he stays in the top 20 in the standings for that automatic bid to the playoffs to count. There are other drivers who have not been able to do that, but they do have wins. Points racing going to be a big conversation over the course of the next few weeks. And you see there, he's going to come off of the corner. Blake dips into the shade. I don't know if that translates to helping with the sunglasses in real life, using a bit of the shade on corner exit, but he's kept the shades on. He's got some of the gobos and intelligent lights or whatnot on the stage shining on him, so he's kept the shades on.
Well, again, I think for Tucker Minter, he kind of alluded to it earlier that yes, it may not be the sunlight. He didn't have as much as the other drivers that were competing there in person, but for Minter, it's probably the glare. You can kind of see the lights flashing. It's still a little bit of a breeze blowing, which honestly, that's probably better than what a lot of these sim racers are kind of doing. If they're inside the rooms and whatnot, it may actually be nice to kind of be outside, cooler temperatures, and get a little bit of a breeze going. But for Minter, I think just trying to negate some of the glare that you see from some of those lights, and I'm sure some of the street lights that are starting to come on in Chicago, just that little bit. If you think of just sitting at home and watching television or watching a movie and you have a little bit of sun glare coming in from the window behind you or something, that, being able to see through that in race is a totally different scenario. So I think Minter trying to negate that as much as possible, or he's just too cool to take his shades off at 9 o'clock at night.
Maybe a little bit of both, right? I was thinking early, especially when the sun was still out and Bobby was talking about sweating at home, that some of these guys with the sun might have really been feeling it. But I think I buy in what you're saying. Now that the sun's gone, if they've got a breeze, it might actually be more comfortable than some of the drivers at home, because a lot of these high-end PCs spit out a lot of hot air when they're running the sim. Good look here again at the battles that continue on through the midfield. A couple of spots shuffling here and there. The Coca-Cola machine of Jonathan Delaney, you saw out of line. That is a lapped car that is not for position. Delaney 1 lap down in 38th position ahead of Derek Bordeaux, who has come to pit road. He's 39th. Timothy Holmes on pit road 40th. Those two cars several laps down and may be out of this race early.
Tough for those guys. Again, you mentioned just the fact with this format that you have a little bit of recovery if you can kind of make your way back, but unfortunately not so lucky here in lap 30. And I know that we kind of talked about this during the sprint race, some names that we're not accustomed to seeing when it comes to road course racing. I think Dylan Duvall doing a tremendous job right now. Again, somebody that we don't often see up front when it comes to these road courses, but put in a solid qualifying effort. Again, his average finish at road courses in this series is 16 and a half. So he was doing well better than that right now. And again, got that win at Talladega earlier this year, but doing a tremendous job right now, staying up front. And again, his career best finish on a road course was all the way back in 2015. He ran third, but I think you kind of alluded to it, Evan. You were commentating back in. It's a much different series in terms of drivers and how many were showing up, how many were competitive on road courses. So I think it says a lot that after struggling a little bit in the more recent history of the series and kind of flirting with top 15s at a time, that he's up here running in the top 5. It's a great effort.
Yeah, and ended up in the mid-20s at the race earlier this year at Brands Hatch. So when there have gotten more competent drivers at road courses, Dylan Duvall has risen above the occasion and has kind of beat that curve and is doing a really good job here tonight, running again in P4 at the moment. Checking it back in amongst the battle for the race lead, Zelensky and White, much like they did at about this same point in the sprint, have started to pull away from Steven Wilson and separate themselves a little bit from the driver in third. Wilson about a second and a half back. You can see him there, still well within striking distance, but Barker White, much to our prediction, has not left the rear deck lid of Bobby Zelensky's car. These two have been glued together for the entirety of this race. And we've seen times in the past, Blake, where you follow so close behind somebody, especially on a lot of the 90-degree corners, you kind of miss your turn in or you miss your turn out, or if the driver in front of you makes a mistake, you make that same mistake. But Parker White not afraid of being on the bumper of Zelensky throughout this. He doesn't want to back off. Is that just to keep the pressure on the 18?
Yeah, that's certainly got to be something that Parker White is thinking about. And I think you brought up a great point there, that following a driver into a mistake, especially when you're running just mere inches off the wall here, it's so common and it can be very easy to do. The other thing I gotta think that if you're in Parker White's mindset right now, you are close enough, and especially as we got to the end of those 15 laps, you started to show a little bit perhaps better pace of being able to keep up with Bobby Zielinski and keep that lead within a car length. If you get the opportunity in one of these corners, do you try to get physical with them? We saw Bobby Zielinski. He got physical somewhat to win his race at Brands Hatch a little earlier this year. And all it takes is a slight bump at a track like this to put somebody into the wall, and they're going to get significant damage. So if you're Parker White, how aggressive are you going to be here with Bobby Zielinski, knowing that, again, so much is on the line for Parker to win? And if Bobby Zielinski were not to win this race, well, it's not going to hurt him that much. He's more than likely still going to be competing for a championship when all is said and done.
Yeah, there's two very different scenarios between these two. Zielinski in, of course, he still needs good points to be able to have that win count, but Zielinski's in a very good spot. For Parker White, though, Blake, it could also be worse. It could be a new race winner in the lead. The fact that Bobby Zielinski already has a win would mean that an extra spot would not get eaten up. But there are already limited point spots available, and with several race winners below the top 20 cut, Parker White would really love to finish this thing here and get the win tonight.
Yeah, again, and we'll continue to see how that plays out. It seems like in these road courses that as everybody runs, we kind of get a picture before the race is done about where everybody's going to finish throughout the field. We mentioned Malik Ray coming into this race, how important it was going to be for him, and he talked about the fact that he's got to go out and execute and try to get all of these points that are on the table. He's not necessarily the most comfortable road course racer, but even you can see him kind of scrolled across the ticker there in the 21st position. That may not sound like a whole lot, but as far as being able to compete and run better at these road courses, I think 21st for Malik, if you told him coming into the night he'd run there, he'd probably take that.
Yeah, it's almost a good points objective anywhere, but especially here at Chicago. Well, we said we'd be checking it back in over the course of the night. Let's go back live to the Navy Pier. Alan Cavana's got some fans with him.
Yeah, and this has been the best part of the night, is that fans by the hundreds, if not thousands, have been streaming by, a little curious, including Ella and Brittany here. You walked by before the event started. You came back to watch. What brought you back here?
It looks so interesting, and it's so delightful to see that you can actually do this from actually a floor pilot and not actually a car.
Are you from here in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know about NASCAR that we're here this weekend?
Yes.
You're going to check it out?
We'll be back.
Now, but I think you've really been focused in. What has impressed you about what these drivers are doing out here? What have you learned?
I've learned that they're very attentive in what they're doing, and it looks like sometimes sport, they're curious. They have this, so it's very nice to see.
I appreciate that. How about you? What have you seen out of these drivers? I mean, what's interested you? This is something like you've probably never seen on Navy Pier before.
That they're very attentive and how really competitive that they have been just to get here. I see that everybody here are low-key having a good time and vibing, but they're trying to win.
Low-key having a good time. That is the best way to describe this. And they have one of the cutest dogs I've seen all day on the Navy Pier. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Alan, and you look like you're having a lot of fun there on the pier. We'll check in with you again as the night goes on. But again, I said it off at the top, we appreciate everybody tuning in, not only with us on eNASCAR.com and the iRacing and NASCAR YouTube and Twitch channels like we do every week, but all of you walking by at NASCAR Fan Fest there in Chicago, stopping by the stage and checking it out. We're happy to have you with us as part of this eNASCAR night in America. Again, keeping an eye on the battle up front. There is big stakes on the line. This is not just an exhibition race we're putting on for you. There are playoff implications in this championship in which there's more than $500,000 worth of cash prizes on the line. And we are getting down to the end of the season. Is deep into the corner there. What a drive in from the 48 car. Almost missing it entirely was Graham Bolin. Rode it up in time. Falkingham crosses back, and they are all over each other in a battle for 8th on back.
This is not a part of the track you want to go side by side in, as Falkingham almost gets shoved into the wall. Cozy's going to be able to hang on to his position. Graham Bolin gets the better end of it. This is a really tight section to be going in side by side. They're able to make it out. Falkingham gets a little bit of a tag there from Lopez. But Cozy right now just trying to stop the bleeding at this point and to hang on to every position he can. Now Tucker Minter's going to look down to the inside of Garrett Lowe, who's fallen back a couple of positions. He's going to try to get up into the 11th spot. Meanwhile, Parker White still, it's been about 3/10 or so. These two drivers have just been locked together through these 13 laps or so. You just have to wonder, does Parker White have something a little extra in the tank? And I don't mean fuel, but as far as tires, has there been something that he can keep this pace, have a little bit of dirty air, but still be able to maintain that pace and have something here for what we're going to be going a little bit longer than what we did in that sprint race? It's the second half that's approaching. We'll really start to see kind of who has saved those tires if they do indeed come into play.
Yeah, double length of what we saw earlier tonight in the sprint. You can watch the battle for the lead and the battle for ninth. It's worth noting Stephen Wilson in third, staying at 1.5 seconds back. He slipped back to that gap, but he has not fallen further back. That's notable because if things do come to blows, potentially amongst your race leaders, he would be in a great position. Wilson, already a 3-time race winner this year, I'm sure would love to pick up another one. That's the 97 Logitech machine of Tucker Minter, midfield. Again, he is one of our 4 drivers who's competing live from the Navy Pier, along with Matt Busa, Nick Ottinger, and Garrett Maines on stage for that event. And Blake, one thing you touched on earlier, the fact that this is a fixed setup race. We get a good look at these drivers. We've talked extensively about how different it is for them to not be in their rig, to be in these rigs on stage in a different environment, but we're not used to fixed setup races either. And if you're tuning in for the first time and watching this event live, that basically means these drivers can't make many modifications to the cars, much like the NASCAR Cup teams will do this weekend. Normally in these races, teams can do whatever they want, change all kinds of things on the cars to fit their drivers' personal preferences. This is one of the few races on the year where they cannot do that. Everybody's car throughout the field is set up the same. But Blake, we've seen this at Atlanta. We've seen this at Talladega. Those are both super speedways. Is there any material difference, any more pros or any more cons to do a fixed setup race for these drivers on a road course compared to a super speedway?
I think with a road course, it just makes things so much easier. The super speedways, it makes it to where it really puts it in your hands to learn the draft, to learn every move that you can make within the pack to try and maneuver. You don't have to worry about trimming your car out or handling or any of those things, because fixed setup for the super speedways, not really going to have to worry about handling. But when it comes to this road course, it really makes these two, the two jobs for these drivers really easy, because Minter and Ottinger would be at a significant disadvantage if you got them to travel all the way out to Chicago, and they're losing time that all of these other drivers and teams would have to be trying different things with the setup, to be trying to find speed in the car rather than just trying to get a little bit faster on the track. So I think it's a good call, I think, in these races, because at the end of the day, you're not going to change the finishing order. Bobby Zielinski's still going to be Bobby Zielinski, or the Mitchell DeYoungs, the drivers we see up front, whether it's open or fixed setup, they're going to be the same drivers, and I think it cuts out a lot of that additional time these drivers would be spending trying to find speed in the car when it's not really going to change the results. And otherwise, any of the practice they put in, it's simply just about getting around this track better. So I commend them for that.
Bobby Zielinski, a 15-time race winner in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, that is tied with now retired Michael Conti, which is still a strange sentence to say, for 4th on the all-time wins list. A win tonight could give him sole possession of that number 4 spot on the all-time wins list. Stephen Wilson has been making a name for himself as well. 8th on that all-time wins list with 8 race wins. Again, just a step back from these two, but he was better than the leaders the last time. Wilson with a 126.6. It was a 126.9 lap time for Wilson compared to Zielinski. So longer race. We have not seen these cars this long. Right now we're officially into uncharted territory, 16 laps in. Curious if Wilson had saved a lot in the first half, and if he will now start to chip away at the gap that those top two had built.
We kind of saw it at the end of that 15 laps that he had fallen back about 2 seconds, and it kind of cut that margin down to nearly a second by the time those 15 laps were over. We kind of see the same thing playing out right here as we get into the second half. The margin's starting to shrink, but it's going to be one thing to get by one of these drivers. It's going to be another thing to try and get by two, but it's just insane the amount of pace and performance that Wilson has regardless of the track we go to. Short track, super speedways, mile and a halves, road courses. Wilson has just been incredible at every type of track we've gone to, and I think somebody that has really come into the zone. He's figured out whatever this next gen car needs, he's given it, and he's given it at every single type of track. And again, I think it just speaks to how impressive he is, how much he's learned this series, and the fact that, you know, he's a deserving favorite to go back-to-back for this championship.
Let's wind the tape back and take a second look between Jordy Lopez and Daniel Falkingham. Lopez in the 90, Falkingham in the 54. The 54, the green car on the outside, a battle for P9 as they came back off the front stretch. This is the run from turn 6 down to turn number 7, which has been a calamity corner for many because of the tires on the left-hand side. And from behind, the touch there to Falkingham got that car out of shape. And then again, we saw this kind of stack up a couple laps ago, and we watched it live. That allowed Lopez to scoot away for the number 9 spot and has left Falkingham down a spot. He just lost another one now as he falls down to the number 11 spot, getting passed by Garrett Lowe.
This is one of those cases you're trying to hang on, and especially when you get into that section of the track, when you get towards turn 7, 8, and 9, and 10, you know, there's kind of different areas you would point to in this track in terms of passing zones. You think turn 6 is probably one of the better ones. Well, if you don't get it figured out by turn 6, going into 7, 8, and 9, side by side, you're just asking for trouble. You almost just have to kind of reason with somebody that either you let them go or you're able to make a move to get clear, because going in side by side, we've already seen it a number of times up front and in the back of the field that it's just not something that's going to play out very well for a lot of those competitors if they're involved in that. But again, I think a great showing for Lowe and for Falkingham, really. Again, not two drivers that we think of that they're road course maestros, but doing a tremendous job here tonight. Even to get a top 10, I think is a solid night for both of those drivers.
And those onboards, a good reminder that we've got those live cameras, not just with those 4 on stage, but also many other drivers throughout the field. And for those of you watching from NASCAR Fan Fest in Chicago, gives you kind of a glimpse of what the 4 drivers on stage may be used to seeing at home. The physical rig that they're sitting in, so the chair, the computer, the monitors, the steering wheel and pedals will be very close to what these drivers normally do at home. But of course, they all have their little nuances that make their setup theirs. We'll continue to watch again as this continues on, but we're past halfway home with some 17 laps down and 13 laps to go. Bobby Zelensky continues to lead the way. We have 4 drivers now off of the lead lap. Jonathan Delaney, Ray Alfala, Colin Keister, names to add to that list that I had referred to a little bit earlier on in the night. They have fallen off of the lead lap. And there's a look there. They are all of the drivers back at home in their sim rigs. That's a good perspective. Somebody's texting that tells me top left that's somebody who wrecked out of the race.
I think that's Ray, and he's out of the race right now. So
scratching his head. It's been a tough year for Ray Alfalo. We'll see if we can chat with him or somebody else as this race continues on. But jumping right back in to the Daniel Falkingham machine. Again, if you're joining us this weekend for the NASCAR race in Chicago, some of these paint schemes may match what you see this weekend. A lot of the teams here have teams in the NASCAR Cup Series. Those sponsors will align. There are also equally as many non-NASCAR teams, esports-specific teams with their own sponsors as a part of this series. But a lot of the team names, the Joe Gibbs Racings, the 2311 Racings, if you're joining us for the race this weekend, those are team names that you'll hear. And Blake, we kind of tossed it up, but there it is. You've got Ray Alfala.
All right, Ray, we kind of saw you there on our driver board. Unfortunately, we saw you were out of the race. What kind of happened to you?
Yeah, we're back there racing Keegan for 90th, and I think he locked up entering turn 1 and got into me, and I just, pile drove into the wall. So we were struggling for speed this week, but we were just trying to just stay out of trouble. And we avoided a few wrecks. We got up into like 29th or something up there, and then just like some pace, and we're just looking to finish and avoid trouble, and trouble found us.
And it's been that kind of year for you. You still got a couple of chances to turn around, but now you kind of set your sights on maybe eyeing that top 20 to keep yourself in this series. I know there's a couple more tracks that I think you would enjoy, and you've experienced a lot of success at in this series coming up in Indianapolis, Pocono, and a couple of others.
Yeah, Indy and Pocono are going to be big for us. I think we're pretty much out of the top 20 even, so we got our eyes on the contender series. But I mean, it'd be nice just to have good runs at those tracks. I think if we had pretty good cars, just can't figure out qualifying, and then races are too short really to capitalize on it. But maybe you can figure something out at Indy. It's my favorite track.
All right, we'll see if you can, Ray. Thanks for chatting with us.
Thank you, guys.
We were talking earlier about that all-time wins list and where Bobby Zalenski and others stood. Of course, Ray Alfala, the top of it, 27 race wins, the winningest driver in series history, and a 4-time series champion, the only driver to have more than one in his career. Already thinking maybe long-term contender series. Of course, the top 20 drivers in this series re-qualify for it for 2025, unlike our NASCAR counterparts. There are no contracts to lock you into a ride for a year. You've got to qualify in every single year. Bottom 20 will have to re-qualify through the winter if they want to be back here in 2025. Back up front, Steven Wilson's disadvantage to the leaders, Blake, within 1 second for the first time since about lap 5.
And Wilson, notice those last couple of laps, that was about a 1.5 second gap. It's now down to under a second. So Wilson starting to flex some muscle here at the Chicago Street Course. Parker White is as close as he's been in a number of laps of trying to get by Bobby Zalenski. So as we come by now, 10 laps to go through the start-finish line. We got one heck of a race on our hands, and even Salas just started to make up some ground. He was over 6 seconds back. It's now down under 5 seconds for the 4th spot. So if anything were to happen with these top 3, if they get to racing hard, if they lose a lot of time, I wouldn't say that either Vicente Salas or Casey Kerwin would be out of the running for this.
You can see those two on the horizon there, watching from 4th and 5th, but with Parker White and Zalenski all over each other from the drop of this race, have they pushed each other a little bit too far? And has Steven Wilson saved a little bit more to be able to make a challenge late in this race? I think we are squarely now in a 3-way battle for the race lead. And Blake, that's why I asked the question about Parker earlier, right? Keeping the pressure on Bobby. Is that the strategy to force the 18 into a mistake with Parker? Because I would think back it off a little bit, get some breathing room, but if you give a guy a gap, you might not be able to give it back. That was my concern with Wilson, but he has really stepped it up. Well, let's check back in. We've got more people tuning in live from the Navy Pier. Alan, who you with?
Yeah, it takes a lot of people to make this happen, this event like this. So I am with Ray Smith, the Director of Gaming and Esports for NASCAR. You know, the iRacing side, the eNASCAR side. What does this mean from the NASCAR side to make an event like this happen from Chicago?
I mean, to be the lead-off of race week in Chicago, I mean, that's an incredible opportunity that we're always willing to take, and to showcase the Coca-Cola series on a platform like this is an honor.
Your team and iRacing, of course, so I mean, we've gone live from the NASCAR Hall of Fame. We crown our champion in a live event. Now we're here live from Chicago. I mean, what is next? We pulled this off. What do you think is possible for eNASCAR?
I mean, we just keep on building on it. You know, we look at the opportunities that NASCAR presents us with Chicago and with the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and we just look what's the next step. So there's definitely more to come, but we'll wait till next year.
You know more than most what this setup has been like for these drivers who have agreed to help us out and change their entire setup and be out here today racing. What do you think it means for them, the competitor-wise, knowing they're helping kind of grow this right now?
I think it's a total buy-in. They know that this is a marketing move for us. They know that they don't have their equipment at home. They're not completely comfortable. They're in a new world. There's breeze. There's horns from boats. There's people walking through. So it's a different environment for them. So the commitment there from their end is definitely big for us.
Right, we're live here in Chicago. The last 2 years, we've crowned our champion live. Anything you want to reveal about coming up this year, September, October? We live again to crown a champion?
We will be live again. We don't have any announcements yet, but it will be bigger than years past.
Bigger than years past. That's what's cool. We're sitting here on the steps of Navy Pier, watching them race here in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. What a great way to spend a Tuesday.
Couldn't see Ray up there on the bleachers with you, Alan, because I couldn't see the ponytail from our perspective looking at you from the stage.
Got a nice haircut.
Yeah, looking good. Shout out to Ray, his whole team, everybody with, of course, iRacing and NASCAR and everybody else who was a part of making things happen there live and in person at the pier. And Blake, I mentioned it. This is the third live event in series history. Of course, we've done the season finale the last 2 years at the Hall. We like 4 drivers. That works great for the championship 4. We've got 4 here on the streets of Chicago, and always teasing that something else is to come. We'll have something exciting for a live event for the championship this year as well.
Zielinski had a really tough turn 6 that allowed White to be able to make up some time, and Wilson, who was over a second back, now within 8/10, coming to 8 laps to go. This is as close as White has been. He's almost to the back bumper of Bobby Zielinski. That gap that was kind of 3/10 throughout the running of the race, now under that, and the margin is so close. You have to wonder, as the laps continue to tick on by, how White will get aggressive, because we've thought, or at least I've thought, that eventually Zielinski would pull away. That not being the case, White able to get a great run here. You can see Zielinski trying to break the draft a little bit earlier than he has been. This is how the playoffs would shake out. White in a great points position right now. And again, Parker White is close enough that he could contend for the regular season championship, which would lock him into the playoffs without a win. The problem is that the points leader is right behind him in third, so he's not making up any ground on who's your overall points leader right now. So for Parker White, he's got to be worried about first right now, not second, but trying to get one spot better.
Yeah, 27 points behind Wilson coming into tonight's race. Again, there's so many moving parts because you saw there were 3 points paying positions there, White being one of them. Well, you might say, okay, after tonight, there's only 2 races left. He's locked in. But again, that's not the case because there are more race winners this year, not in the top 20 in points. If they can get there over the course of the next few weeks, it would limit those positions available. And again, could put White at an uncomfortable position. I also wonder, with White all over the back of Zielinski, Blake, you mentioned it at the end of the sprint, right? Kind of save that aggression. You don't need it now in the sprint race. With Wilson breathing down his back, I wonder if that kind of expedites Wilson's idea here, right? Maybe you wait to make a bump if you do get physical late in this race, but if Wilson continues to pressure him, that may influence him to want to make a move for the race lead earlier than he would have wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. And again, he's trying to getting kind of the same treatment from Wilson that he's trying to apply to Bobby Zielinski right now. You just want to force them into a mistake, that any little slip up, even if it's not them going to the wall or anything like that, just missing an apex or brushing the wall off the corner, that you want to be able to pounce on that mistake immediately if you have the opportunity to do so. And this is kind of why a lot of that shuffling happened a little bit earlier and how important it is. At Falkingham, you can see kind of those drivers in front of him. Garrett Lowe, Cozy have continued to pull away from him, and Minter's still just kind of been stuck behind Daniel Falkingham right now. He's not been able to find a way around, and that's why when you do get those opportunities to pass, it's so difficult. You almost have to take advantage of them when you can.
See, the breeze is continuing to lend Tucker Minter a helping hand as he sits in P12. All of these drivers, Blake, in the 128, high 127 lap time range. They're about a second off of the leaders. So the leaders are running right now what was this part of the field's very best lap times from earlier in the race. It's about a second difference between the fastest cars and the cars in the midfield. In racing terms, that sounds like a lot, but when you divide that over 12 corners, entry and exit, it's a lot of nuances. Some smoke in front of Tucker Minter there. I wonder if somebody got a little bit sideways or smoked the tires. No car around, so they continue on, and he continues in pursuit to Falkingham.
I think that was Michael Cozy Jr. just a little bit up the road that locked up the right front, and was lucky enough to kind of get back out of it, then reapply the brakes, and wasn't going to have that negate him too much. As we kind of flip on over, you can see Matt Busa now, who's kind of in the same position as Tucker Minter, got some lights flashing and trying to compete right now as well to make up some spots for he and his KHI race team. 5 to go. We mentioned that White was all over the back bumper of Bobby Zielinski. Zielinski has managed to pull away by about a car length or so. There was one corner about a lap ago that lost Parker White a little bit of time, and so now he's got to try to work on being a little more perfect than Bobby Zielinski and making his way back up. And again, that's how precise, that's how difficult it is to try and make these moves, Evan, that you're setting a guy up almost for 30 laps, and both these drivers executing so very well right now, and just a little bit of a mistake sets you back 5-6 laps or something like that. So amazing to see the concentration. I think that's why Bobby kind of even said through 15 laps, man, I was so focused. I'm sweating right now through 15 laps. Is just the margin of error is so small between these top three.
And around this 12-turn circuit, Blake, there's about 6 corners that are true 90-degree turns. That includes this one here, a heavier braking zone for a 90-degree corner than you would get for a 45 or a sweeping turn. If you're behind the wheel of that 53 car, where are you trying to set Zelensky up? Where's an optimal place on the racetrack to try to make this move?
Again, I think the best passing zone, it's coming up into turn 6. So you go through 4 here, this kind of high-speed sweeper into turn 5, and then right off this corner, that's where you got to set it up. You have this long straightaway to try and get the job done into turn 6, because once you get past turn 6, really not another passing opportunity until turn 1. So for Parker White, that's where you got to try to set it up. You got to get close throughout the rest of the lap, but off of turn 5, I think, is the best chance that you have to realistically try to make a move.
Well, we jump back to check in with the number 17 of Brian Mercurio, and if you've been joining us all season long, that name may jump out to you because that is notably not Colin Bowden behind the wheel of that car. Colin unable to make it for tonight's race, being replaced by Brian Mercurio, who's one of 9 eligible backup drivers to compete in the series, Blake. So he's the 41st different driver to compete this year, making his first Coke Series start since the 2022 season.
Yeah, and again, I think this is a great program that eNASCAR, when Ray Smith talked about continuing to improve this series, I think this is one of the many improvements that we've seen. Now, this is the first instance that this has happened in 2024, but we've gone through the past and had a number of issues where sometimes drivers are suspended because they're hitting an incident limit and all of those things, and then all of a sudden these teams just, well, they don't have a driver to field, and you've seen 37, 38, or 39 car fields in the past. Well, this was kind of a new thing heading into 2024, that the 21st through 30th place drivers in contender would be eligible to act in a substitute role should a certain situation come up. Colin Bowden had some traveling commitments earlier this week that he had to tend to and wasn't able to get out of. So a nice move here from eNASCAR to allow Brian Mercurio, who again was picked out of that group of 9 drivers, to come in here, and I think showing you why. He's running 18th, and he found out, 4 or 5 days ago that this was happening, so has not had near the level of practice that the rest of these drivers have, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, competed in the Contender Series, which is the series below this one, to requalify, finished 28th. Of course, the top 20 get the automatic buy-in. He finished high enough to be within that backup driver range. Taking a couple of final looks around the stage at NASCAR Fan Fest at the Navy Pier for NASCAR Week in Chicago. Taking a look at our drivers, Matt Busa, Nick Ottinger, Garrett Maines, and Tucker Minter, as they compete live in front of a live audience, all of you walking by and checking it out over the course of the night. Happy that you're with us. We're 2 laps away, though, from crowning a race winner. There's a good look at all of them on stage, and that battle for the win still on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, but it is more so now become maybe a battle for P2. Bobby Zelensky is a full second clear of Parker White and Steven Wilson for the first time tonight. It's the biggest lead Zelensky's had.
Again, I think Parker White was just really pushing the issue, trying to make something happen. Zelensky has been perfect so far tonight, and all it took was one mistake. White lost about half a second, and without Bobby Zelensky making a major mistake, he can kind of back it off at this point. And I think you're exactly right. Now Parker's going to have to try and hang on to second over the driver that leads him, the only driver that leads him in the championship standings in terms of overall points, and Steven Wilson.
So making up minimal points in terms of that regular season championship, which could be another avenue for him to qualify in to the playoffs. Of course, it could be worse for Parker White. It could be a new race winner, which would take away a points paying position on that grid of 10 cars to make it to the playoffs. So Parker White going to do everything he can to hang on to this P2. And Bobby Zelensky takes the white flag. There's 1 lap to go in the Logitech G45. He just needs to stay clean Easier said than done on one of the hardest tracks on the circuit for the next 2 miles and change for P2. Wilson looks to turn 2, doesn't make it happen.
Again, you can see a little bit of lap traffic up the road, but should not be a factor in this final lap. Parker White, a 2.5 seconds back, would need a miracle to try and make up all that ground on Bobby Zalinski as they head through turns 4 and 5 for the final time. It's all about holding off Steven Wilson just behind him as they head towards turn 6.
Steven Wilson already made it back-to-back years with a race win when he went earlier this year on the road course at Brands Hatch, looking to go 2 for 2. And in an era of this series where we talk how there are more drivers than ever who could win a road course race, when back a few years ago, it was the Zelenskis, it was the Mitchell DeYoungs at the time who were expected to sweep them. In this hyper-competitive era, Bobby Zalenski looks to sweep the road courses on 2024. Final couple of corners, lap traffic, Keegan Leahy up the road. Last car on the lead lap is not going to be a factor. And Bobby Zalenski going to double down in 2024. He goes back-to-back at the Chicago Street Course. Big sigh of relief. Zalenski joining Wilson as the only other multi-time race winner this season. White, in the end, able to hang on atop Wilson. Those two started first, second, third. Blake, they finish on the podium.
And again, that's why I referenced that initial start of the race and how important it was. And that's why Zalinski was able to put himself in position. Again, it was side-by-side between he and Parker White earlier on that opening lap. He gets the job done as we have another number of positions still being contested here on the final lap. This is Briar LaPrade just behind Malik Ray. Again, Ray, very important that he comes out of here with as many points as possible. Unfortunately for him, was running 21st for a lot of the day. This would be a 30th place finish for Malik Ray, so unfortunately we'll lose some points out of this.
Yeah, they look all the way to the stripe. A couple of drivers trying to make a final move. As again, with Leahy finishing just in front of Zalenski as the last car on the lead lap, they've got to come all the way around to complete their final lap. But the 18 machine, the celebration is on. This winning moment is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official fan refreshment of eNASCAR. Is not only as Bobby Zalenski won his second road course race of 2024, but he backs up his win from the streets of Chicago last season and has gone back-to-back in Grant Park. And here comes the celebration for Bobby Zalenski, who with his 16th career win has passed Michael Conti and has sole possession of 4th on the all-time series wins list. Well, let's take a look at your Coca-Cola move of the race tonight, Blake. Caution-free and notably pit-stop-free, with this feature race being 10 laps shorter than it was in 2023. Zalenski qualified third, took pole by winning the sprint race, and it really came down to this valiant defense that looked like several times Parker White had him cleared.
Well, again, without the variable of pit stops, this was the biggest execution point of the night, was this restart, or this start of the race, I guess you could say. We went through the sprint race, but this would be an initial start of this 30-lap feature, side by side. And again, Parker White, he's got the momentum. He's got the preferred line here. Easily could have been a situation where Parker White gets the lead here, and that's all she wrote. But Zalenski hangs tough through turn 4, on the outside through turn 5, and right here, that corner, so incredible that he was able to hang on to it. You can see Parker White a little bit loose on the cold tires and perhaps a little bit of contact, but it's enough for Zalenski to hang on, get the lead into turn 6, and from there, that was all she wrote. A perfect 5 corners there from Bobby Zalenski, and he wins in the race.
Transition into the Sunoco post-race report, where our top finishers are standing by with you.
We'll catch up with Bobby Zalenski once again on the Sunoco post-race report. And Bobby, you told us earlier that, well, you had to sweat a lot through 15 laps. How much different was it going there through 30 with again, Parker White, who was hounding you all night long. It was so close between you two.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to him. Like he pushed me last year, pushed me this year, and I don't know how I was able to stay in front of him on the first lap there. I knew it was going to be a fight with him and Steven of some sort, one of them. And thankfully, I was able to, stay ahead of him. And then he just pressured me the whole race because he was faster, or at least he felt like he was faster. And we've had like a day since the last update, which changed tire wear completely for road courses. And I kind of like halfway through that race figured out a better way to downshift that pretty sure Parker was doing. And that gave me a little bit of life, a little bit of confidence. And then I messed up the downshifting a couple times and almost, I felt like I was driving terrible, honestly, just incredibly inconsistent, which is just, not acceptable. But I guess it made it fun and he made me work, man. Shout out to Parker. He's always a pleasure to race and he's insane.
Again, you're one of two multi-time winners now in this series. The regular season championship is probably a little bit out of reach, but you still have 2 races left before the going gets good. What do you hope will be different as you approach the postseason this year in the playoffs versus the past where you've been oh so close to finally winning that championship?
Just keep plugging away. Keep plugging away. I mean, last year we just got a little bit of misfortune at Michigan and it kind of derailed our playoff run, but we were like a winning car every single one of those races at the playoffs last year. So I'm just going to do that again. Like, you don't want to look for the championship race, right? Like, make it there first. Be a damn honor to go back to Charlotte and race there again. And then we just let her fly. But that's beyond. Like, next 2 races, try to win one of them or both of them. You always try to win and get more playoff points. And just to give ourselves a good chance of making it back to the Hall of Fame.
Again, you mentioned Michigan. That will be the first race coming up in round 15, the first round of the playoffs here this season. Bobby, congratulations on your 2nd win of the season.
Thanks, everyone. I'm very happy. Just tired.
All right. Well, was able to get some rest as we let Bobby Stalinsky go and celebrate with he and his team on the Sunoco post-race report. We'll catch up with your 2nd-place runner. Again, was referenced in that interview of Bobby Zielinski that he's a joy to race. We talked to Parker White a week ago, and kind of same song, different dance here. So close to getting it done once again here on the street course race. What are kind of your initial feelings and thoughts after crossing the line here?
Well, overall, it was quite a good race. I really don't think there was anything I could have done different there at the end. And yeah, like overall, it was just a really good race for me. The heat race, I was in the pole obviously, and I wasn't able to. Hold on just a second, sorry. Yeah, so the heat race, I lost lead lap 1, and I was honestly fine with that. I started P2 for the feature race, and I thought I was going to be much better off there starting 2nd. And it proved to be right. I was able to be ahead of Bobby going into turn 4, but unfortunately I just didn't clear him off of turn 5. So I tried to send it into the next corner, the left-hander. It just didn't work out. And then from there I just tried to save the tires. And yeah, really from there I was just trying to stay with Bobby, look if he was going to make any mistakes, see if I could send it on him. There was one mistake he made. I was just a little bit too far back. And it was a very unfortunate corner for him to make a mistake in, because even if I wanted to make a move in the next corner, it was the really sharp right-hander before the fountain section, so I don't think I would have made it work anyway. But yeah, just another P2. I'm honestly really happy with that compared to all of my results from this season. A win would have been amazing, but like worst case scenario for me is going to be if there's 2 new winners and then Malik gets back in. So there could be 2 new winners and Malik stays out of the top 20 and I could still get in. But yeah, a win would have been really good here. But P2 is going to keep adding up those points and still that much closer to making the playoffs.
All right, Parker. Well, again, I know we said it last week, and I'll say it again, that win is coming here soon. May come in the next 2 weeks before we start this postseason, but well done on another P2. And I know, again, we'll be talking to you sometime in the future. I'm sure one spot better.
Thank you.
Parker White finishes in 2nd tonight at the Chicago Street Course, yet another race, and Death Taxes and talking to Steven Wilson after an eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race. This time P3 for Steven Wilson, who those last couple laps, I know Bobby Zielinski kind of mentioned the difference in tires and whatnot. I know that was something you guys kind of had a couple of days to really adjust to. You seem to be the strongest driver on the track those last couple of laps. What more did you need to try and run down Parker and Bobby in those last couple of laps?
Yeah, I'll be honest, Blake, that really surprised me. I thought my weakness going into this was that I didn't have enough long run, and I wasn't going to be able to keep up because based off of testing yesterday, some races we ran on the sim, Parker was driving away from me at the end of these runs. So honestly, I feel like I drove pretty well, all things considered. He just seemed like he was kind of stuck there in dirty air, and I think if I was any faster, I probably would have been too. So pretty much just maximized the night, which I'm happy for, and I don't really know what else I could have done different there. I think at the end I was just a little quicker than Parker. He had some right front damage, must have hit the wall or something, but I'm happy with the finish tonight, and hopefully we'll go back to these ovals and keep this good speed.
All right, surging into the playoffs. A discount double check is good enough for P3 tonight, Steven. Thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you. Go Hawks.
Well, big thanks to all of those drivers for joining us on the Sunoco post-race report that continues as we go back to the Navy Pier with Alan Cavana.
Yeah, an event like this, to pull it off, none of it happens without the drivers who are willing to make that sacrifice and be here with us. So let's get a final word from them. Matt Busa, I mean, hundreds, 1,000 people probably walked by during your event, right in your eyesight. What was this like tonight for you?
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience to have all these new factors that we never have to deal with on a week-to-week basis. Having people like I'm in peripheral vision over my shoulder, having the sun burn the heck out of my neck. Having bugs on the screen. At the start of the race, I was like, man, how's my windshield already dirty? And then I realized it was real bugs. So, yeah, overall, really fun event. Really cool to see all the fans out here enjoy it.
All right, good stuff from Kevin Harvick Incorporated. Nick Ottinger, I don't have a trophy for you, but I think out of you four, you were the best tonight. So,
teammate a little bit on the end, so yeah.
What did you think of tonight, this experience as a whole? I mean, what you got to stare at the entire night, the pier here and the harbor, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, the skyline was beautiful. I think actually having the wind while we're racing was a nice breeze. It was comfortable. Probably the best racing conditions, like once the sun went down. So, like, it was beautiful. Definitely some of the glare, like Booster was saying, was a big factor for us for qualifying, but that's a beautiful time for sure.
All right, now to my left there, Mains. I know not the best race for you. You're kind of watching the replay, watching some wrecks there. Tell me about the fun you had, the fun side of tonight, the best part.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like there was a lot of potential there in our race, and it's definitely disappointing to know like where that could have gone. I did it to myself in qualifying. I mean, I could use the glare excuse, sure, but I mean, I clipped the wall. That's all there is to it. So, had to start behind the 8-ball, got caught up in the massive wreck, getting hurt in the heat, and then there in the feature, I think we had a really good shot to come to the field. It was really fun the first lap. I mean, just picking them off. And then we get wrecked. So it was kind of an uphill battle for the whole night. But, I mean, we clawed our way back up to 27th with a wrecked car. So I guess we'll take points.
And Tucker Minter, you finished one spot behind your teammate. I don't know if that's fun or not. But overall, the experience being here, being part of this live event once again.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing to be here in Chicago. Just the weather was awesome. And it was really, really exciting before that real-life race happens that we give a glimpse of everybody walking down the pier here to see what's going to be like this Sunday and Saturday. So there's definitely a lot of fun. Wish we could have got a top 10. Felt like we probably should have been in the top 10 if not for some people using us up. But definitely have to thank iRacing and Logitech and everything they do for us to put this event on. And hopefully we'll be back next year.
We thank all four of you guys for being here, for willing to put your seasons and stuff like that on the line, if you will, and be a part of this event. It is just the beginning of what's going to be an awesome week of NASCAR racing here in Chicago. I can't wait to do it again for another live event for the eNASCAR series.
Looking forward to when we do it again with a championship on the line. And Alan, big thanks to you as well for joining us and being in the elements. Blake and I, much like the other 36 drivers in the field, we're sitting at home, and Alan was out in the field. We appreciate him being a part of this one. Blake, let's take a look at our Coca-Cola full race results. Again, in the end, Zielinski leads every single lap, but it doesn't tell the story. Parker White, Steven Wilson gave him a run for his money throughout all of it.
That he really did, and again, great job by both of those drivers. Steven Wilson did as well. How about Vicente Salas? Mentioned that he was kind of making up some ground towards the end of the race, just ran out of a little bit of time. Casey Kerwin, as much as a 5th place is a great run, may not have been good enough for the point situation that he finds himself in. He's going to need a little bit more of these next couple of races. Duvall, Bolin, some great efforts by them, as well as Lopez, Lowe, and Cozy. Really some impressive
both of those
and
BS
surprising
competition
drives there.
cars right there, Blake. The William Byron cars, Nick Ottinger, Tucker Minter right there. Of course, we heard from them. Big ups to Nick, who started 28th and went all the way to 15th. Also, Caden Honeycutt, bit of a quiet night, but let's give him a shout out. Had to start back in 38th position at the start of the heat. Took advantage of that one and was able to turn that into about a 17th place finish or so. And even Dylan Alt started 35th in the feature. He ends up with a P20.
I'm still so impressed with Brian Mercurio. Had maybe 4 or 5 days notice that he was going to run a Coke Series race, finishes in the top 20 at a road course when he's not a road course ringer. Very, very impressed.
It's an impressive showing. It's calling about and going to go back behind the wheel of that car next week. Zach Novak started tail end of the field. He is able to climb up to a P26. Garrett Maines also gets some spots back. Heard from him as well in the post-race chatter there. Seth the Merchant again taking advantage of what was given and all of that because as you turn to the last page, a couple of drivers do not get the results that they were looking for tonight. Briar LaPrade started 19th. He slid back, ended up 31st. And then, of course, those drivers P36 on back. Delaney was under power, I will say, at the end of the night, but Fala on back, Blake, unable to make it to the distance.
Yeah, tough. Again, a lot of these drivers kind of having some difficulties throughout the night. No caution flag to speak of, so if you had a problem, wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to try to recover from it.
Of course, there are only 2 races left, and for the first time since 2020, we return to the Brickyard at iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway for race 13 of this eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Blake, I will not be with you in the booth. I'm certainly going to be trying to tune in and catch that one. NASCAR, of course, returning to the Oval this season. It means that eNASCAR follows suit. Ray Alfala says it's his favorite track. It's always a fun one.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've run the Oval in this series. Back in 2016, it was kind of a staple of this series for a very, very long time, and unfortunately just hasn't been running quite a while. So good to get back to the Oval, and can't wait to see the type of race it puts on with these next-gen cars. We haven't seen that yet, and again, very special venue and so much on the line with 2 races left in the playoffs, or to go before the playoffs.
And a Segment 3 champion still to crown. The William Byron Esports Bracket Challenge will continue on. All drivers in the top 5 tonight. I had picked to win in round 1, so far so good. We'll see how those brackets deteriorate as the races go on. And, of course, a battle to qualify for the playoffs. All of that and more when we come back next time. But until then, that is it for us here tonight, both virtually and in real life, from the Chicago Street Course inside of Grant Park. I want to say a big thanks on behalf of everybody at iRacing and NASCAR for putting on tonight's broadcast behind the scenes and for putting on everything at the main stage there at Navy Pier and with NASCAR Fan Fest for making that live event possible. But for your broadcast team tonight, for Alan Cavana on site, for Blake McCandless and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to say thanks for tuning in and congratulations to Bobby Zelensky, a 2-time race winner. He has made it to more eNASCAR playoffs and more eNASCAR Championship 4s than anybody else. But in 2024, he's got a shot. Can he get that elusive title? We'll find out. But we're back in 2 weeks, July 16th, at iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That race and every race of the 2024 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series can be found right here on the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from Chicago.